Forget about the crowds, the size of the school, their fancy uniforms, and remember what got you here. Focus on the fundamentals, and most important, don't get caught up thinking about winning or losing this game. If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're gonna be winners.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film, explore its themes, the history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. Don't adjust your device. This is John Roca taking the lead on this particular episode of the Cine-Files because this is one of my favorite films, and Steve was very gracious to ask me to host this one and kind of run it. So this is, I'm popping my cherry a little bit. You guys know I host a bunch of shows, but this is one where I have not actually run the episode. So this is going to be a fun little experience for both of us, and I hope it works out.
I think it's going to be great. I'm so excited.
So those of you who don't know me, my name is John Roca. I'm a voiceover artist, host of numerous shows, and occasional actor here in Los Angeles.
And my name is Steve Morris, and I'm a filmmaker and directing teacher in Los Angeles.
There we go. And this week, we have decided to do a 1986 film called Hoosiers. And it is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, sports film ever made. Directed by David Anspaugh, written by Angelo Pizzo, starring Gene Hackman, Dennis Hopper, Barbara Hershey, and a host of unknowns as the team, the Hickory Huskers. And this is such a fantastic film for me because it hits all the classic sports movie cliches of the underdog team that no one gives a chance to, that fights and wins and succeeds at the end of the movie, right? It's very much like Rocky, very much like all the greatest sports films are about underdogs overcoming great odds to achieve success. And it's loosely based on the Milan High School team that won the 1954 state championship. It was the basis for this movie. Norman Dale, which is the part that Gene Hackman plays, is based on Bobby Knight, who was a legendary Indiana University basketball coach. Anyway, we're going to get into all the stuff about the film. We're going to talk about the score, talk about the direction, talk about the writing, talk about the acting, how they all came together, how Barbara Hershey this is not one of her favorite films at all to have made, which we'll touch on. But first, what we like to do here on the Cine-Files is talk about how we came to the film. So, Steve, how did you come to Hoosiers?
Didn't see it in the theater. And I remember hearing that it was really good, and then probably rented it in maybe 88 or 89.
Okay.
That was really good. Maybe watched it once or twice since.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
And you know, it's just, we talked about this before.
Yeah.
I don't think I watch as many movies as you do.
Okay.
And there are more movies that sort of fall through the cracks.
Are you a sports movie guy, though?
I am,
okay,
but I'm not a basketball guy.
Okay.
See, this is part of the thing. And I know we talked about before when we talked about The Natural, is that I really think like baseball and boxing are the most cinematic sports.
Absolutely.
Because for all sorts of reasons that it becomes down to mano a mano, because it's easy to extend time, because the dramatic moments become really, really clear, and that things like basketball, football, soccer, hockey are harder to film. They're harder to choreograph. They're harder to, and so I love baseball and boxing movies. I'm not a baseball fan. I'm not really a basketball fan too much,
right?
But maybe it's the basket. I don't know. It's just not a movie. I love Gene Hackman.
Yeah,
I think it's a great movie. I just haven't watched it that much.
This is an interesting point because Gene Hackman and Dennis Hopper both thought that their careers were over by doing this movie. Wow. Because no basketball movie had ever made money in the history of film. None, and not pro and not college, and here they're doing a high school basketball film, which has even less, prestige and notoriety. And you've said, like you just said, boxing and baseball have a history of having fantastic films made in black and white and in color, right? Up until this 1986 film, there are numerous. Even Field of Dreams, I think, was around this time as well.
A little after.
Yeah, a little bit after, but it was there, right? This idea that you could do basketball films, right? 8 Men Out was coming out eventually at that point too, and so this idea that they would be on this film is just it's funny to me that they were like so afraid that this was going to ruin their careers. I came to the film when it came out. I was so hyped for this movie because I was in high school. I went to go see. I went to Garfield High School in Virginia, and I saw all the basketball games every year. As a freshman, as a sophomore, as a junior, as a senior, I would go. I would travel with the team whenever they made state playoffs. I would go and travel. I remember us going to see me and my best friend Maurice Jones, who's now the city manager in Charlottesville, Virginia. We went to go see them, our Garfield Indians, play Heritage in a playoff game and lose on a 3-quarter shot at the last second.
Wow.
And it just so, to me, basketball
That's crushing, by the way.
It's very
crushing. It's so great when you're the people where you win and you feel like, because you're at this moment of elation.
Yes.
When you lose at that last moment, and then you're just like, what do I do with myself?
Exactly. Yeah. Which comes up in this movie. So, but what's, to me, it was something that when I saw it, my mouth was agape probably the whole time, because I just was so in love with this idea, this slice of Americana, this idea of like Midwestern values, you know. And David Anspaugh talks about this in interviews that nobody wanted to make this movie. Nobody wanted to make this movie. This idea of these clean-cut kids. And in fact, when Angelo Pizzo wrote the script, and I hope I'm saying his name right, they told him, you got to put like drug use in it, or you got to put something where the kids are like have issues. And I think what's great about this film, and the reason I kept going back to see it over and over again, is because these are straight-laced kids. These are not like, they're not kids that are purposely like not having black kids on the team. There's none of that. No. They're from a small town in Indiana, and they're just trying to survive. And it's initially the story of Gene Hackman and his redemption, and it becomes the story of these kids believing in themselves, right? And that's what's so great about the film. So anyway, let's start talking about the film itself and how it got made. There was a lot going on here with David Anspaugh and Angelo Pizzo. They went to college together at Indiana University. That's where they met for the first time. They were in a fraternity. I think it's Sigma Nu. They met there and developed a friendship. And all this stuff was happening at this time with like, it's so ironic. It was right during the counter-protest, counter-revolutionary, all this stuff was happening with Vietnam, everything to that extent. And all this was happening. And they were like kind of just writing, Pizzo was writing, and Anspaugh was working all this creative stuff himself. Like all this, he's older than Pizzo, so he was a little bit ahead doing his things. And Pizzo was ahead of Anspaugh doing his things. So they were kind of around each other's circles, and they kind of found a connection with each other, which carried through all the way to now. Wow. They live together in Bloomington, Indiana now in 2017. Yeah. Really? They maintained a friendship for a very long time, did 2 or 3 other movies together, but this was the first one. And this is David Anspaugh's first feature film. And so I'm just going to ask just a rude question. Yeah. Are they gay? No. Okay. No. No, I mean, I feel like I'm doing the Seinfeld. Okay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. No. But I'm just curious. No. They've just remained really, really good friends. So yeah, and through a lot, and through Hollywood, and Pizzo moved back to Indiana 10 years before Anspaugh did. And now they teach at Indiana University at what is it you do? Like, what do they call those extension colleges? Like they teach, what is it whether you teach at other colleges, what do they call that when you're adjunct professor? Yeah, they do adjunct work. And so they do that, and they still teach all around Indiana and stuff of that nature. And Pizzo moved back because he wanted to raise his kids not in LA. And Anspaugh moved back because he had kind of hit his wall about being in the city and wanted to go back. And, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people can handle it, some people can't. And some people just get sick of it and want to go back and go back to their roots. Sure. And there's nothing. And I think that's what's great about the movie is it kind of, reacquaints us back to a time in our history of this country, the Americana, like The Natural does, and like Black Stallion did, which we covered on one of our episodes. Well, one thing that's really clear, there is a genuine love of Indiana and of this kind of small town. Yes, it's really, really clear, and it's not. And I know that like the when they were trying to find location, that the location's worried like, are you some big Hollywood folk who are going to come in and make fun of us? Right. And of course it's the opposite. It's that these people love the people and the community and the landscape and all of the world and culture that they're coming into. Yeah. And that shows throughout the film. Yeah, and they shot it in Indiana. Like the producers initially were pushing them to shoot in Canada. And Anspaugh just insisted that they shoot in Indiana. Let's get a little bit of background on both of them, if that's all right with you. Yeah, Angelo Pizzo.
You're the boss, man.
Yeah. I'm running this thing. Pizzo also wrote Rudy, which I absolutely hate. And I know people love Rudy, but the Top 10 show, Matt and I, we absolutely hate Rudy, and we will protest Rudy. We really do. We really think it's one of the cheesiest, dumbest sports movies. And if I've lost some of you, I apologize. It just isn't our bag.
Okay.
But he wrote Hoosiers. Pizzo grew up in Bloomington, Indiana. He's the son of a Sicilian immigrant. He attended IU, where he received his bachelor's degree in political science. Right? And he was originally going to become a lawyer, but his father encouraged him to do something he actually wanted to do with his life. So like I said, he joined Sigma Nu, where he met David Anspaugh, but then he later attended film school at USC as a writer. And he began his film television career with Warner Brothers. He was doing story development. Then he moved over to Time Life Films. I'm sure he was part of those Time Life commercials from the 60s and 70s, right? He served as a vice president of feature film production there, and where he worked with Anspaugh. So these guys have been in their circles the whole time. And so they got together and wrote, Pizzo wrote Hoosiers, and Anspaugh was one of the first people he wanted to direct the movie. He was an associate. He did a lot of stuff outside of that.
When is this? Like, what year are they?
This is 1961, I think. Yes, 1961, 1965. Oh, no, I mean, it's 1965, right around that time.
That's when it got written?
No. When it got written was in 1978, 79. They start to...
That's what
they start to pitch this idea of doing the movie, right? Anspaugh himself, who's the director, studied at Indiana University as well. He also went to the USC School of Cinematic Arts, and then he taught high school.
My alma mater.
Yes, right. That's why I bring it up. He also taught high school in Colorado. Now, he worked as an associate producer in television, and he directed episodes of Hill Street Blues. He won 2 Emmy Awards. He did St. Elsewhere, Miami Vice.
So big 80s TV.
Yeah, big 80s. So when Pizzo went to the producers with this script and wanted Anspaugh to direct, the producers were against it. Because like, how is this guy who did like these gritty shows like Hill Street Blues and Miami Vice, and to a lesser degree St. Elsewhere, going to do this like slice of Americana film set in the time that it's set in 1951 and do this kind of thing? But because they had grew up in Indiana, they understood Indiana basketball. They understood the religious nature of Indiana basketball. It ended up working out in the long run, as we saw with the end product of the film. Anspaugh also directed Fresh Horses. He also did Rudy.
Right.
He did Moonlight Valentino and The Game of Their Lives, which this is really great, quiet film about the United States beating England in the World Cup in 1950.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with Patrick Stewart and a bunch, because it was a bunch of transplanted English people who became American, who had been naturalized American citizens, who then took down mighty England in the World Cup. So there was a lot going on here with Anspaugh. And the reason I bring up Anspaugh too is in 1997, he was diagnosed as clinically depressed. He was at the time married to Roma Downey, who is the actress from Touched by an Angel, who is currently married. They did the Bible movie. Who did Mark Burnett? She's married to Mark Burnett.
Oh, right.
So at the time, he went through this incredibly dark depression in the 90s. He eventually realized what it was. He went to a clinic and he had to go into he lost the marriage. Roma Downey would not stay married to him because of this. He had just burnt too many of the bridges there. But it's interesting, and he talks about this whenever he goes into interviews and talks. This is a man who was successful with his career, but had hit a wall where he could no longer function. And it's just interesting how the arts community is filled with people like this who still create amazing work and then have to climb back out to keep creating more work.
Well, to me, it's like, when we look at other people in the world, we see them from the outside.
Yeah.
And they seem so solid.
Yeah.
And frequently seem like, oh, you have it all figured out, And we don't see the struggle on the inside. We can't see someone else's insecurity. We can't see their sadness, their depression.
Right.
And so the fact that first of all, people in the arts are frequently have more of these things than other people.
Yeah.
And we go, oh, you're successful.
Yes.
So therefore you have the thing that I think I want.
Yeah.
Therefore, because I'm thinking, well, if only I had the 3-picture deal and the Rich and Famous contract from the Muppets.
Yeah, you're set.
I'm good. And even though we have all this evidence that that's not true, because we see, Robin Williams killed himself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you see, oh, obviously this person had all this stuff, and yet they're an alcoholic, they're divorced, they're having, it's not true.
No.
We continue to believe if only I have that external validation, I'll be happy.
Right.
And the other thing is that, and we see this over and over again, and this is where really listening to the Mark Maron podcast really hit me with, is that, sure, he made Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Sure, he made Rudy. Does he have the career he wants? Does he feel like he's successful? Right. He might look successful to us, but he might have spent months and years and years and years struggling to get the thing he really wanted to get made, and no one will talk to him.
Yeah.
You know?
And his path is littered with success.
Sure.
Emmys, you know, producing credits, directing, you know, people loving the movies he's directed. But you're right. What you perceive of your career versus what other people see. You know,
one thing I learned is that whatever level we're at, there's somebody below us and there's somebody above us.
Exactly.
And so wherever you are, you go, because I've heard this all the time, like from actors will say, man, if only I could just get auditions.
Yeah.
I don't even care if I book the part. I just want to get auditions. And then they become the person who gets auditions and they go, God, I just want to book one thing. I don't care if it's a one line in a commercial.
True.
And then I'll be happy. And then they book that thing. It's like, I just want to get a guest star. I don't care. I don't need a recurring. Then they get the guest star. And what happens too is that then there's someone below, like let's say they're booking recurrings and the person below them or two steps below is like booking every once in a while, maybe getting a guest star. And they're looking at them going, God, why aren't they happy?
Yeah.
If only if I could be like them, I'd be happy.
Right.
You know? And that person is looking up at the next person going, I want to be like them. And none of them are happy.
No.
Because this industry sucks.
This is supposed to be an inspirational movie.
The podcast isn't supposed to be inspirational.
That's true.
We never said we're doing an inspirational podcast. The movie is inspirational.
It is. But I think this supports my point of view of life. My life is a video game. No matter where you're at, the next level is even harder, and you don't want to go back to that other level before that you already conquered.
And the big boss is about to show up, and you will soon see game over.
Exactly.
Now you need to put in more quarters,
and you have to restart every once in a while and start over again. The film itself was shot in New Richmond, and that stood in for the fictional town of Hickory. As I said, it was based on the Milan High School. Milan High School. It's pronounced Milan High School, but they were not some plucky underdog team. They had gone to the state semifinals the year before, and then they had won the then they actually won the champ, and they were favored to win the championship. So they weren't some team that came out of nowhere. So
they were a small school.
They were
from
a small
town,
absolutely.
But they had established being great.
Exactly. In fact, Oscar Robertson is quoted because he played them in the semifinals of the year they won the championship, and he said, and it's a great. People who know basketball history, Oscar Robertson is one of the top 10 basketball players ever. Wow. He's called the Big O, and he said like, playing them was like playing a bunch of tiny mites running around all over the place, and I could never catch any of them, you know? And and if you want to see the game is available on the special edition of Hoosiers, of the double disc edition.
And did you watch it?
It came out on DVD. Yes, I've watched it before. And it's only like an hour long, the game, because those games were only 40 minutes long. And they weren't shot clocks. There were no shot clocks. And so you're just doing what you do. So yeah, it was shot in Indiana. New Richmond stood in. They got a bunch of other schools, high schools, to be a part of this and come in and be, you know, in the stands and be these kinds of things.
Oh, you mean when they're shooting the movie?
Yeah, when they were shooting the movie. They had a lot of that coming in. And in fact, James Dean, Dennis Hopper says this in interviews, that James Dean, when he was in high school, played against Milan when he was in Decatur. He played against Milan, and so he understood. Now, Pizzo and Anspawn, they shopped the script for 2 years before they finally found investment for the project, and they only got approved for $6 million.
Yeah.
For a budget.
Which is small even then.
Yeah.
Even then, that's a small movie.
Absolutely. So that forced them to hire most of the cast and the extras out of New Richmond. So these guys that you saw in the film who play the basketball players are all people from Indiana, except for one guy. And that's the actor who played Everett. He was coming out of Los Angeles. But everyone else played basketball in Indiana at that time. They were hired out of the local. Right. And it's amazing to me that they just found these guys to play this team.
You know what?
Right.
They look it. And that's one of the great things about the film is they look like Indiana high school basketball players.
Right.
They don't look like you picture the CW version of Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Where everyone is gorgeous and ripped, and that is, that's not what we're seeing here.
Yes. Agreed, man. Agreed. Speaking of casting, the producers and David Anspaugh were looking at a couple of actors, and initially Jack Nicholson was very interested in the script, very interested in playing the Gene Hackman character, but he was doing My Two Jakes at the time, and they were going to file a lawsuit against him if he dropped out of the movie or created space to go make Hoosiers. So David Anspaugh asked him, like, who would you recommend? And he recommended Gene Hackman.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they initially had looked at, and Harry Dean Stanton turned down the role that Dennis Hopper ended up taking of Shooter because he says he can't remember the reasons why he turned it down, but he turned it down.
Not surprising.
Yeah. And the other person that was dancing around at this time was Burt Reynolds in 1986. I don't know. That's as the coach, that's a whole nother film. You know, I think that's what's great about Gene Hackman in this role is that he completely embodies. You could believe that he was this guy that punched a kid when he was in coaching, and he was on a ship for 20 years in the Navy. Like, you get all this background about the Norman Dale character, and Gene Hackman, I think, embodies that.
You know what's interesting? Just thinking about Jack Nicholson is that Gene Hackman has certain qualities. Like, Jack Nicholson is dangerous,
yes,
and intense,
yes,
and Gene Hackman is certainly intense and you can feel the danger there. Yes. You can feel some anger there.
Sure.
But those edges are softened with Gene Hackman in a way that they're not generally with Jack Nicholson.
Right.
You know, and the other thing is that when Jack Nicholson's in a movie, most of the time, that's Jack Nicholson in the movie.
Right.
You know, we talked about when we talked about The Shining.
Yeah.
Where Gene Hackman, there's so much nuance that he brings. Yeah. That Jack Nicholson really wouldn't.
Right.
Burt Reynolds, that's a whole other thing.
I just can't imagine Burt Reynolds as Coach Norman Dale.
Particularly in 86, you're right.
Yes.
Because it's not like Burt Reynolds by the time we get to Boogie Nights.
Right.
You know, who's been through some stuff.
No, it's Burt Reynolds who has just stopped being the mega star of the 80s, and he's trying to get back on top.
So I think we're happy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and what's great, and to put a little cherry on top of this cake, is that when the film came out and it was a success, Nicholson said to Anspaugh that it would have been a mega hit if he had been the star of the film.
Of course.
What was interesting is when they were making the film, Anspaugh talked about how Gene had him on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He gave him his first anxiety attack. He said, one morning I woke up and I couldn't walk. The room was spinning. I thought every day on the film was going to be my last because Gene's agent was trying to get me fired.
Wow.
And yeah, he said the only thing that saved his job was the dailies. The producers said, look, David's not getting fired. They showed a half hour of dailies to Gene's agent, and he saw what they were actually trying to make. There's supposedly a 2-hour and 40-minute cut of the film, which if you see the special features, if you have the special features, the deleted scenes are like 30 minutes long.
How are they? Because I didn't get a chance to look.
The scenes are great. They cut them out, and they make sense to cut them out.
Right.
You don't want a sports movie that's going to be 2.5. It just doesn't make any sense that's longer than a basketball game. That it's profiling. That doesn't.
Why we do podcasts that are longer than the movie we're talking about.
That's what we do. That's right. Especially when we have Scott Mantz on here.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to the movie. Let's get into the movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to touch into?
No. I'm excited. This is
How am I
really
doing,
fun.
Steve? How am I doing?
It's great. I'm learning a lot.
All right. So the plot starts out. The film starts out, which is with this incredible score from Jerry Goldsmith right from the beginning. Right. We fade into the screen and we hear this incredible, great music, and it's underplaying as this lone solitary car is driving down these long roads that don't look necessarily that, like paved and industrial.
We're going out into farmland,
exactly,
into the heartland,
exactly, into agriculture, all of that, right? So we see the farmhouses, so we get great shots of the vista of this town of Indiana, right? And there's a gentleman who did a 20-minute film, which if you want to go watch it on YouTube, about going back to visit all these places, and they still look the same. Wow. Which is amazing, right? Which is amazing. Anyway, so it's 1951. The guy driving the car is Gene Hackman, playing the character of Norman Dale as the coach. He becomes a high school teacher and head basketball coach of the Hickory Huskers. He gets hired, we hear, when he arrives to the high school. It's a small little high school. He walks up, you hear the hardwood floors. He has this kind of interaction with Barbara Hershey, which is a bit like uncomfortable.
A little off-putting.
You're not the new coach.
Are you expecting somebody different?
Younger. Yes.
Oh, sorry to disappoint you.
Yeah, no, I must have misunderstood Cletus. You see, he said he was hiring someone who never coached high school before, so
I coach in college.
And I hear you're a new history and civics teacher as well?
That's part of the job, as I understand it.
Have an experience teaching?
Tell me something. Am I being interviewed here? I thought I already had the job.
Straight up.
You know, if everyone is as nice as you, country hospitality is going to get an awful name.
What a pleasant thing to say.
One of the things I like about this, you know, one of the hardest things to do as a screenwriter, you got to get your exposition out.
Yes.
And we want to find out that there's some backstory about Gene Hackman. We want to hint at it. We want to get, and the question is, how do we do it? And one of the solutions is you always want to do this in conflict.
Yes.
You never want to someone just come out and say, here's some backstory.
Yeah.
But having her ask him about it and where did you come from, and creating mystery about it plants it, and it also plants conflict between the two of them.
Yeah.
And it makes it, you're immediately intrigued with this guy.
Right.
It's a really nice setup. Like, oh, what is his bad? What is going on? What is the problem in the past?
Exactly. And what's so great about it too is that we've just been enjoying these vistas of Indiana.
Right.
And we get this feeling like it brings you back to this place of calmness and peace and comfort and 1950s, right? This idea of this more simpler time. And he walks in and immediately is confronted with this person questioning his motives, questioning what he's doing, and has to have an uncomfortable conversation with her, which ends up being, in essence, a weird kind of courtship between them. So
sure.
And
we never have courtships that start off with like, "Hey, you're cool. I like you too," except if you watch like the Star Wars prequels, and that's why those aren't good.
Okay, all right, fair. So he goes up into the principal's office to see Cletus, who is his friend, Cletus Summers. He goes in there, and that's when we have this kind of moment of vulnerability from Norman Dale, where he thanks him for bringing him on, and immediately, and this is what's so great about the script, is you sense that this is how people talked back then, right? He says to him,
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're doing.
Let's not be repeating ourselves. Your slate's clean here. We got a job to do.
which is great because it's his way of saying, it's done. Let's move on. There's no need to be constantly saying thank you to me.
Right.
Right?
So Cletus,
yes,
the actor playing Cletus, he sang Purple People Eater.
The 1950 song or 60s song?
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
The one-eyed, one-horned,
flying
purple people eater?
We will now cut to that song.
Well, I saw the thing coming out of the sky. It had a one long horn and one big eye. I commenced to shaking and I said, ooh-wee. It looks like a purple people eater to me. It was a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater.
And we're back.
I had no idea.
Neither did I.
That's brilliant.
That out this morning. Yeah. One of the things they mentioned, I got to listen to like half of the commentary track, and I didn't listen to the other half. But what's the writer's name again?
Angelo Pizzo.
Pizzo. Oh, so what he said
or
is
Pizzo.
when he,
I guess maybe Pizzo. Yeah.
I don't know. Angelo.
Yeah. Sure. Angelo.
What Angelo says is that when he first wrote the script, he gave Norman Dale way too many lines.
Oh.
And he said, okay, I got to take him out. Mm-hmm. And then they have their first reading, and Gene Hackman comes up and he sees there are all these dog-eared pages and markings, and he goes, uh-oh, the actor's going to give me notes, which, that could always be a little rough. And what Gene Hackman came up is he pointed all these lines and said, you don't need this line. I can act that. And you totally see that throughout this movie.
Yes.
Gene Hackman's performance in the scene with Barbara Hershey, in the scene with the principal, you see all of those feelings. You see all of his past.
Yeah.
You see, and we don't have to say it. He's going to act it.
Yeah.
And he really does.
Yeah. And having watched numerous documentaries or pieces over the years on coaches, Gene Hackman radiates a coach.
Totally does.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And this is a thing I was thinking about watching this movie is like, why is it important that we have coaches?
Yeah.
What is a good coach? Because this movie is an exploration of what is a good coach.
Right.
And coaches, whether it's your karate sensei or your gymnastics coach or your soccer coach, or even a great teacher, they're really important people in our lives.
Yep.
And if we don't find the right coach, it's going to hurt us.
Yeah.
We all got to find them. They're really important.
Yeah, and I think that's why there are not a lot of good coaches in any league.
Oh,
in any profession. There are not a lot of good coaches because it's really difficult to be successful at coaching.
Oh, yeah.
You can get hired. It's real difficult to be successful. Right. All right. So, and then he's given Cletus gives Norman Dale a tour through the high school to talk to him about what he's going to be doing, the task he's taking on. And then we see Jimmy, and we meet Jimmy Chitwood for the first time. Jimmy's out in the court and he's taking shots.
Not missing him.
And Cletus introduces Norman Dale to Jimmy, and Jimmy doesn't shake his hand, doesn't say a word to him, just keeps shooting. The actor who played Jimmy Chitwood, I think his name is Melis, he had 4 lines in the movie.
Wow.
That's it.
That's a presence.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? None of those kids have a lot of lines.
No.
They have a presence,
Right.
but not a lot of lines.
No. And what's fun to watch about his performance, in my opinion, is that he gets so much done. He's a master class in quiet acting.
Yeah.
And yet this guy did not go on to do much else after this, even though he's shown that he can be a phenomenal actor without having to say a word. Maris Valenis is his name, right? And he still shows up to the reunions. I've seen him on a number of, doing research for this podcast, number of reunions he still shows up and has conversations with, and he's great. Just a great guy in that way. All right, so we get this idea that Jimmy is like this incredible basketball player, and he had a really strong connection to the former coach who's just died.
Right.
Right? That's why Norman Dale had this opportunity come up. We find out that Norman Dale has been in the Navy for 20 years. And there was something that happened.
And he coached college ball or something.
He coached, right. He coached, we
Ithaca,
find
New York.
Ithaca College, right? We find that later on, found out later on, but he's been on a boat this whole time.
Yeah.
So we always come back from the Navy. And he's kind of an old guy to have been in the Navy, but
Right.
I think back then that was okay in the 50s. You could be just a regular Navy person. Like he's not
They're 50-year-old.
Sure, but they're usually like, admirals or something like that, like higher ranking, but he's
Not if you're not. I mean, you're in the military, but
Yeah.
not if you're a non-com. I mean, you go up and do your Master Chief or your,
Right.
Yeah,
Master Chiefs. Yeah, I guess.
I mean, that's a non-com. I mean, you were in the Army, so maybe you're not familiar with naval ranks.
No, we had chief warrant officers in the Army.
Yeah, chief warrant officers,
Yeah.
sure.
So it's different.
Yeah, but there's non-commissioned officers, and you could be a petty officer, you could be there'd be a 50-year-old guy that wasn't an admiral or anything.
I guess that's just me. I would want to get all the ranks as much as possible. So anyway, that's just me.
But it is interesting because I'm always fascinated that we have this dual system military. This is off the top.
Yeah, sure.
It comes from the British Navy that you had, because it was really about gentlemen and men.
Yeah.
And that because like I'm sure that if you met a master sergeant, that was like a serious guy.
That's huge.
That's a huge guy.
Yeah.
But he's still going to salute a second lieutenant.
Yeah, he is.
And that's because the lieutenant is on the gentleman track, and the master sergeant or sergeant major or something, they're on the men track.
Yeah, the men track.
To be to use the old British terms.
Yeah.
And we still have this hierarchical system.
Yeah.
And Gene Hackman is very much he is not in the gentleman group.
Nope, he's an NCO.
Yeah,
that's
he's
for
a
damn
non-commissioned officer.
That's for damn sure.
And it's weird to me that we still have this. I'm not criticizing the military.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's good reasons, but it's just such a strange system.
Yeah.
Anyway, off the topic.
No, it's all right. All right, so then we meet the townspeople.
Yes,
These
men who are like the dads, and they're not very nice.
No, they're not very nice in
No.
this like haircut place.
This town doesn't like change much. So we thought we'd get together here tonight and show you how we do things here.
We trust that you're a fine, upstanding, God-fearing man with Christian morals and principles who will set an example and a standard of leadership for our boys. Tell me, do you believe in man-to-man or zone defense?
Once again, we are introduced. It's so interesting, this film. It's kind of subversive in its way of deconstructing this idea of the good old days. Right? The 50s, the golden generation, this kind of stuff, right? They are pretty much assholes to Gene Hackman including Barbara Hershey, as soon as he shows up. Because he's a foreigner. He's an out-of-towner, right? He's not necessary. He's not one of them. And so they start to question him on whether he's going to run the zone or 2-3 defense, if he's going to...
They don't just question him.
Yeah.
They tell him.
Yes, they tell
say,
him.
You're going to run a zone or man-to-man.
Right.
You got to run... What do they say? You got to run zone on. And
Yeah.
We've always run zone.
Yeah, that's what we always...
they are...
It's always going to help, blah, blah, blah.
And I'm going to use this term. I'm not using this in any way political.
Yeah.
They are conservative
Yes.
in the classic sense, which is we are resistant to change.
Yes.
This is how we've always done it.
Yeah.
Therefore, that is right. This is what you must do.
Zone defense is all we've played in the past, and it's the only thing that'll work this year.
Those guys think they can be coaching, but this also speaks to this idea of fans thinking they know better than the coach, right?
Yep.
There's always fans watching and go, "Oh, why didn't you run that?" Or they should have done that. They should have. And I'm guilty of it too. I will not deny that.
But we all do it,
right?
Particularly when it's the game's almost over and you're like, what? Why didn't you pass him the ball? He had a hot hand all night.
Right. And I think we do that as fans of anything. We'll watch a movie and be like, why would you cast this person? Or why would you cut there? Or why didn't you put the scene in? You know, all those kinds of things.
And one thing I know from directing, which is like coaching in its own way, is there are all these different people with all these different perspectives. They don't know what I know.
Right.
Is that I know more than that. It's like, you don't know that guy's ankle hurts.
Right.
You don't know that this person, you know, like, and it's not that the coach isn't necessarily wrong sometimes.
No.
It's just they're the only one that they have the best picture of everything that's actually going on.
Right.
Which the fan doesn't.
Right.
You know.
And I love the way that Gene Hackman deals with it. I love the way that Norman
He's
deals
great.
with it. He hits that wall and he goes,
Mr. Jack to their gentlemen. It's been real nice talking to you. Good night.
And then he just walks out.
And yet, because Gene Hackman is a great actor,
yes,
you see all the inside.
Yep.
And you're with him. You're like going, oh my God, how he's angry and he's scared and he's frustrated and he's going, is this going to be my life? Like, this is what I've signed up for?
Right.
I don't have any other choice. I have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
All of that is in that. It's been nice.
Yeah.
And he walks out.
Because he knows if they push him, he's going to have an unfortunate altercation with these people.
Yeah.
Right? He has this power always bubbling below the surface, which I love about him, this intensity. All right, so then we have him interact with Barbara Hershey again.
A little more,
which is even more.
She's not nice.
No, she's really not nice to him because she's afraid that he is going to corrupt her pupil, Jimmy Chitwood. We find out she has this connection with Jimmy.
Well, and she's you can feel the defensiveness of her too. Yes. It's not just she's defending Jimmy. Right. It's that she is unhappy and doesn't want to be hurt. She doesn't want to be touched. Right. She pushes people away. Yes. That's her natural thing. And Barbara Hershey, I know we talked about her in The Natural. Mm-hmm. She's really good at this kind of thing.
Yes.
Like she you know, as playing a complicated character that's a little bit difficult, she's really good at that.
She's a very powerful actress in that way. You're right. She commands her space and pushes you away when she wants to push you away. And you have to earn her letting you in.
Absolutely.
Not just in the characters in the films, the audience as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which I enjoy.
We don't know how to feel about her.
Exactly.
You know, because we're on Team Hackman at this moment.
We are.
And she's not nice.
He's our protagonist. So we're following him. Right. She's not nice. But all right. So then we have the first practice where he organizes the kids and he's like walking out. And we have the great Chelsea Ross. Chelsea Ross is one of the most amazing actors that you see in any sports movie. He's great in Major League. He's so much fun.
That's right. That's who that is. Yes. Oh, you're right.
Chelsea Ross is a fantastic guy in any sports movie you put him in. He can be.
Are we going to do Major League on the Cine-Files?
I hope we do Major League.
I
fucking
really
love
like that movie.
Yes.
Okay.
We should get a guest for that. There's got to be one of those actors that can come and do the show with us. I mean, for God's sakes. But what's so great about this scene to me is once again he knows what he's doing. He knows, Norman Dale knows what he's doing, and he has no shame in putting people in their place that he thinks need to be put in their place so that he can do the job he needs to do. Because the kids are what matters here. The kids are what matters. And when he sees Chelsea Ross and he's like yelling at them to just shoot the ball every time they get the ball, he knows that's not good fundamental basketball, right? And so he tells him,
well, first of all, let's be real friendly here, okay? My name is Norm. Secondly, your coaching days are over.
And he tells him to give him the ball. And the guy says,
look, mister, there's two kinds of dumb. A guy that gets naked and runs out in the snow and barks at the moon, and a guy who does the same thing in my living room. First one don't matter. The second one you kind of forced to deal with.
Translate. That's some sort of threat.
And it's so great because he completely defangs him. He defangs him by doing that, so much so that he bitterly mutters under his breath as he walks out.
I don't think he defangs him. I mean, this is
really? Oh, I think so.
In that moment, I think he defangs him. Mm-hmm. But what he does is arm him for the future.
Yes.
Because, and this is the thing, is like, I love Gene Hackman.
Yes.
And there's no question that guy's got to get kicked out of that practice. There's no question about it. But there's also no question that Gene Hackman's methodology maybe is going to get him in trouble.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like maybe And it's so fun, like, because the next moment is that now he's going to give his first talk to the kids, and immediately, I can't remember the players' names.
Buddy
starts disrespecting.
Yes, by talking.
And he just kicks him out.
Yeah.
And he is right.
Yep.
100%. And this would go back to this thing of being the coach, of being like, this is the rules, and you're going to play by. And right away, if you disrespect the coach, you're out.
Yeah.
You know, and having been, because I've been a sensei on a mat with a kids class, and having been in the position of getting disrespected, you know, it's a hard one. And it's different today too, because I have all the parents sitting, you know, watching.
Right.
There's one moment where a kid took a swing at me. I mean, I don't think it was that serious.
Right. Whoa.
But there was like two kids that were pretty, there are two brothers who were pretty, they acted out a lot. And we got the sense that there was some problems at school, and you know, some and so they tended to cut up a lot. And I was kneeling, discussing, you know, showing something.
Yeah.
And he was to my left, and he threw a punch at my face. Now, I don't know how serious that punch was.
Right.
But he threw a punch at my face, and I caught it, and I put him on the ground in a pin.
Yeah.
And I look, and I was right at the edge of the mat, and I look up, and his mom is like 2 feet from me, like eye to eye with me.
Right.
And I went, oh shit, like what's going to happen now? I didn't hurt him or anything.
Right.
And the mom like nodded her head at me.
Yeah.
Smiled.
She understood.
She was like, well, and she was like, thank you, you know, for this thing. But it's a weird position where, because, you know, it's like, you know, you're in loco parentis. You are the parent in this moment.
Yeah.
And the job of the coach is very different from the job of the parent.
Yes.
And what he does, he just kicks him out.
Right.
And what he's doing at that moment, if those guys never come back, his team's going to suck.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have a team that cannot play than a team that does not listen.
And I think this is the first moment for me where I absolutely fall in love with the character of Norman Dale.
Yeah.
Because he is a principled man, and he knows what works and what doesn't work, and he's willing to risk losing this opportunity because he has to do it his way, the right way, the way he knows that works, because he has been a successful college coach, not high school coach, college coach, which is a whole level above. And so he knows his way works. He's got to find out how it works with these high school kids. And so he cannot be cordial and nice and, you know, stroking egos. He has to be, you get out, your coaching days are over. You talking, get the hell out of my practice, because I have to have people who are committed to doing what I need them to do. And then we go right into that practice, right?
Right.
Into the training, right? He's running him around. And there's like, when do we get to shoot? When do we get to do this? When do we get to do that? He's like, my practices are not designed for your enjoyment. Yeah. And he's saying, we're not going to get run off the court. We're going to be a team with a lot of endurance and a lot of ability to withstand long games, to be successful throughout the entire 40-minute game.
Well, and two things about this. One is it's about fundamentals.
Yes.
Is that you get the sense when he watched, just walking in on that other coach, there were no fundamentals. It was all about
just shooting.
Shoot the ball.
Right.
Just run down.
As soon as you're open.
You know, and not thinking about forming plays, not thinking about discipline, not thinking about position, all those other pieces. Something that I thought when I taught martial arts is push-ups aren't fun.
No.
There is nothing fun about push-ups. There's nothing fun about repetition.
Yeah.
There's nothing fun about, you know, painful stretches you might have to do in a Taekwondo class. Yeah. There's nothing fun about running the same, you know, dribbling up and down the court, gut busters, Alabamas, you know, all those things. They're not fun.
Mountain climbers,
all those horrible things. Yeah. And what those are the building blocks to be able to do the other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, is that when you doing any kind of sport, I mean, I'm not a basketball guy at all, but I know it's all the same, is that if you have to think about that pass, if you have to think about dribbling the ball, you cannot do it well.
Nope.
You have to do it so many times that it is instinctual. And the only way to build that up is boring, difficult repetition over and over again. And that's what we see in this first practice.
Yeah. And he's teaching them defense, the fundamentals of defense. Hand down, one hand up, one hand down. That was the defense back then in the 50s. That's how you did defense back then. And he's showing them. He's running around the chairs, doing the passes, the chest passes. And I love this moment where Ollie drops the ball and Norman Dale says, hey.
Let's be real clear about what we're after here. Wipe that smile off your face. This is not funny. The 5 players on the floor function as one single unit. Team, right? No one more important than the other. Pop the ball, pop it, get rid of it. Come on.
He doesn't want them to get like just so repetition that they're not thinking too. He does not want them to be automatons. He wants them to do it so that it's without thinking, but also they know what they're doing. Like they understand why they're doing it, right? It's really important. You have to have the combination of both to be a successful coach. And then we have the dad show up, right? Who ends up becoming an assistant coach later in the film. He comes in, and once again, this whole idea of country, Midwest, grounded, he's this large man with these large jeans and huge denim jackets.
He's a big guy.
He's a big guy. But he comes in with his hat and hand initials to apologize for his kid. Back when dads would apologize for their asshole kids. And it's just
I've
great.
done a lot of apologies.
Well, it doesn't seem to be the norm nowadays, and you hear that from a lot of sides of this, teachers and coaches and what have you, and he says to him, kids get mixed up from time to time. And, if he has if you get any more trouble from him, and the kid apologizes, he says, you're the boss. And Gene Hackman he does not go, okay, I get it. You're right. Come on. He says, he has that moment where he pauses and he looks at the kid and he goes, all right, there's an hour left of practice. Go get dressed. It's great.
Well, and I think there's two value things coming up against each other. One is the value of the town who wants to control this game of basketball and control the coach and have them do it the way they've always done it.
Right.
And the other value is you respect your elders.
Yes. And
this is one that I 100% agree with you. We have lost a lot of.
Yeah.
And part of it is because we're kind of interested. We would want kids to be more people and all that stuff. Yeah. But the thing is, you don't disrespect your elders in this manner.
No.
You don't walk out on the coach.
Right.
The coach is the coach. Yeah. Maybe down the line, if you have a problem with the coach, we might have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But in the first practice, you give that coach respect.
Exactly.
Or and again, Gene Hackman's right. Or get the hell off my court.
Right. Exactly. And that's what he does in that moment, right? He says to him, and so he comes back. And so there we have that whole sequence. And then the dad turns around. And I love how he
takes him out.
Just to end this, he's taking out the sheriff, the town sheriff. He's taking these people who logically would have more authority over this guy. But because it's a small town, he knows everybody.
Right.
And so you imagine he was one of these guys that because he was so big the whole time as he grew up, he automatically had the respect. He was a strong, quiet, grounded
quiet
guy.
Big man power.
Yes, exactly.
I don't need to raise my voice.
No. And he turns around and he says to them, he says, boys, this man's got a job to do. Right. And it's gonna get out. And the sheriff, this little midget sheriff, is protesting the whole time.
Yep.
And he steers him out. And I love that. I just absolutely love that. Then we go to the diner with Cletus and Gene Hackman, Norman Dale. They're having pie, and we have the introduction of Dennis Hopper.
My friend, my good friend. Friend of years, friend of tears. You're looking fit and fiddle.
Velvet Shooter Fletch. This is Norman Dale, our new coach.
How are you? Coach.
And Hopper is a drunk, the town drunk. And then, of course, because what happens and what we've seen before in movies and what we've seen before in life, people get caught in this greatest moment of their life that they're never able to repeat again or get past. And so they're caught in the past in a cycle. And the alcoholism is driven by that. It is a way of numbing the pain of his real life. And he has to go back to these moments where he was a god.
Shooter.
Yeah, he was shooter. He was what he was. Right, exactly. But what he brings up is the memory where he missed the shot, which is, of course, what is also underneath this feeling of being a loser in his mind.
Well, this is what's so fraught with peril of things like this.
Yeah.
Because for every team that wins at the last second, just as we talked at the beginning, you lose at the last second and you tear over that. It's like you got the sore in your mouth and your tongue can't stop going to it.
Yeah.
You just go back to that memory. If only. It'll ruin you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you'll ever experience this, Steve, but losing twice in the Schmodown really sucked. Let me just tell you. Losing on a last question is the worst feeling in the world.
I'm sure.
Bespin ruined me for months. I just was over and over and over again thought about it because I was not going to lose again. I was so determined. And then when I lost to Mark Ellis, the same thing. I was like, I'm not going to lose again on the last question.
Yeah. And yet there have to be losers.
Yes.
And I don't mean like you're a loser.
No,
I mean
no.
like every time you play, somebody's got to lose.
Yeah. For all the people I beat.
Yeah.
I ended up losing, on the last question 3 times because I lost to Mark Riley on the last question as well. So it happens.
Right.
But you just get back on a horse and keep fighting.
Except in the case of Dennis Hopper,
he did not.
He does not.
Right, he does.
He does not. One of the things I love in the scene. So first of all, there's also the son that comes up because he's kind of begs some money, and Everett comes up and says, "Give it up."
Right.
And he gives the money back. I would recommend everyone watch this scene and just watch Gene Hackman, who says nothing.
Yep.
And his you could see all the processing happening in his face and there is discomfort and compassion and feeling for his player, and feeling for the principal, and feeling
for
Shooter, all happening at the same time in a man that says nothing.
Yeah. And I think you can watch the principal too, the actor who plays the principal too, because he looks down out of like, because that's country values. You don't get involved between a father and a son. You don't push the son to let the father accept the money and blah blah blah. Like he doesn't do that. He makes, and that's the actor he was the only actor to come out of L.A.
Oh yeah,
he's that actor who played Everett.
He's good. He's really good.
He's really good. Yeah, and he had a couple more movies after this. But I think it's a great. And Dennis Hopper, once again, this is idea. Dennis Hopper got nominated for an Oscar for this. It's the beginning. Like his intro. The intro is so good.
Yeah,
you immediately feel for this guy, but you know this guy.
And it's a weird thing. We talked about him in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah,
and it's like it's in Apocalypse Now. He plays a drugged up, messed up guy, and he was a drugged up, messed up guy, famously in the newspaper as Hollywood one. And now he's doing this part. This one is so fundamentally different from what we see in Apocalypse Now.
Oh yeah,
because Apocalypse Now is this big caricature,
right?
And it's an amazing performance and an amazing movie. But this is nuanced and human and tough.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
it's a Dennis Hopper we haven't seen.
Yeah,
right. It's so fantastic. All right, so then we go back to Jimmy. You know, Hackman walks over to Jimmy. Jimmy's shooting the baskets out on this dirt court right in the backyard. And I love that it's the shot from the high school, right through the window down and seeing him.
Oh
right?
yeah,
right, because he's shooting and all this kind of jazz. And you said he makes 15 baskets in a row.
So they had it all in a wide shot, and in one of the main shots, he made 15 in a row, and they wanted to stay on it, but then because of timing and when he missed the shot, didn't hit at the right moment, and they didn't get Hackman's performing things, so they had to cut it up. But he made a lot.
Right.
But they also widened the hoop, and they loosened the net, and they pulled air out of the ball, all of which makes it a little bit easier.
You bastards! You ruining my. Steve Morris loves to ruin magic of film.
I just like to tell the truth. If truth is ruining things for you, but to be clear, If you gave me a wide hoop and a deflated ball, I'm not making 15 in a row. And most of his baskets are swishes.
Yeah, they are.
So therefore, any manipulation they did had no effect.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He made some good shots.
He really did.
Yeah.
And the producers talk about, the director, Anspaugh, says that about him as we get further in the film. But this is the scene, and I got a bit confused. This is the scene, like they have this scene with Hackman and Jimmy Chitwood, Normandale and Jimmy Chitwood out there, and it's once again, this is Normandale establishing principle, he says,
You got a special talent, a gift. Not the schools, not the townspeople, not the teams, not Myra Fleener's, not mine. It's yours to do with what you choose. Because that's what I believe. I can tell you this. I don't care if you play on the team or not.
And Jimmy misses his first shot after he says that to him.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
I agree.
And it's that whole thing because he's cracking Jimmy.
Yeah.
You know, he's cracking him a little bit.
So, well, let me ask you this question, though.
Yeah.
When he says, I don't care if you play on the team or not.
Yeah.
Is that true?
No.
Not true.
He's working him.
Okay.
As
is he only working? Is he only working him?
What do you mean? Is he only working?
Well, so there are levels of meaning.
Yes.
So one is the only reason I'm here is to get you on my team, and the thing I'm going to tell you is I don't care about you being on a team. This is 100% a lie.
Right.
There's another version, which is I kind of like you on my team, but I'm not going to pressure you. I know this might kind of get you on my team, but if you don't play on my team, I'm going to be okay with that too.
Right.
That's what I mean by 100%. Is it a full-on Jedi mind trick, or is there some part of him that's not pressuring him?
I always thought it was 2 or 3 levels. In that one, he was working Jimmy to get him on the team.
Right.
Because he also wanted Jimmy to respect him as a coach. Right?
Right.
And I think he because he had coached so many young kids, so many kids, he knew the kind of kid Jimmy Chitwood was. And he knew, because all good coaches, managers, teachers, directors, whatever, will tell you, you never coach all the same players or teach all the same people or direct all the same people actors in the same way.
Yeah, it's
everybody
always
is
gonna be
different.
different.
Right. It's everybody has different motivating factors. For Jimmy, he probably understood, probably from conversation with Cletus, like, of course, I'm creating this fantastical extra story here, but it can be a level that he could play. Is Hackman understood that the reason Jimmy loved this coach was because this coach was all about fundamentals as well. And so the way he was going to lure Jimmy back into the team was to show him that he was a principled person who believed in the fundamentals of what is good and teamwork. He's telling Jimmy, you are not going to be above the team. I don't care if you play on the team or not, because it is a team. So if you come to play, you are on the team. You are not the star of my team. And that's what he's trying to say to him. Everyone's kissing your ass. I'm not going to kiss your ass. If you come and play for me, you're going to come and be equal like everybody else. And also, he understands that Jimmy is dealing with the death of this coach, which is probably a father figure for him. And so he wants to show him, like, maybe lure him back into basketball, because by playing is how he's going to grieve this correctly.
So I agree with half of what you're saying, and I completely disagree with half of it.
That's fine.
So where I agree with it is that he's definitely saying, you're going to be on a team. I'm not going to treat you as a star.
Right.
He's saying I have integrity. He's saying this is about morality, and all of those things. Totally agree. Where I don't agree is where you said that Jimmy's previous coach was probably about fundamentals and all of those things, because clearly that's not true. Because if the previous coach had been all about fundamentals, then the town fathers would not be reacting the way they are. Because clearly the game they had been playing was the shooter's game. It wasn't a fundamentals game. They don't understand that. It wasn't about team. The whole way the town has been set up is about Jimmy being a star. Right. And so if the previous coach had that, I think the previous coach was, and again, this is also fantastical,
right.
but I think the previous coach was a deeply moral person,
yes,
who had a real connection with Jimmy, who was beloved, but he probably was more of a pushover with the town. He was probably...
Because he's from the town.
Because he's from the town. Right. He was one of them, and he probably played the game of basketball exactly the way the town wants Norm to play the game of basketball, because that's the way we've always done it.
Right. Well, exactly the way the town wants him to play, because this coach had played it that way. So the coach had created the taste in the town for this. So I think this coach was successful as what he was doing
up to a certain point.
To a certain point, right? Well, so I think your point is valid.
Just as you could be successful, talent is talent, and if Jimmy is great, they were. I think they said they were, 10-7 or something like that. Yeah. Is that they had a winning season? They didn't have a great season, and they had a winning season because Jimmy's the best basketball player in the area, right? And they played pretty well, and the coach was a great guy, but Norman is a very different person from what that previous coach was. Yes, has to be. Yes, in my opinion.
That's a good point. That's a great point. And then we have that scene in the school, and then they have this conversation with him and Barbara Hershey. She has told him, stay away from Jimmy, and he says, you'll be the first to know, right? Yeah. And now he's gone behind her back to go to talk to Jimmy, and she catches him because she watches it from the high school window. Right. And so then he comes up in his leather jacket.
I love that. That's a nice leather jacket.
Hey, it's a beautiful leather jacket. Yeah. He's great wardrobe through the whole film. Yeah. And so he comes, and then Myra Fleener's there, Barbara Hershey's character is there, and she's like, she has this she's angry, but she's like composing herself because you see her rubbing her head. Like, it's a great physical characteristic. Yeah. And she says to him,
he's a real special kid, and I have high hopes for him, and I think if he works really hard, he can get an academic scholarship to Wabash College and can get out of this place.
Why? Do you have something against this place?
For him, yes, I do. He could do better.
She gives the argument against sports, which you hear from a number of people, male or female, this idea that just because you throw a round ball into a metal hoop, you're a god, right? And he says to him, some people would kill to be a god just for a day, day. And she says, gods come pretty cheap nowadays. And then she says, why? And Hackman finally breaks her down and says, why all the negativity? Why all the meanness, like, to a degree? And she says,
just stay away from Jimmy. I don't want him coaching in Hickory when he's 15.
Yeah. And that's brutal. Oof. Where do you get off?
Right.
Saying that to him. And I love what Gene Hackman, what Norman Dale says. He says, what I'm doing here has nothing to do with you. It is that way of, like, they're drawing their battle lines.
Well, and the thing too, saying, I don't want him coaching in the 50s well, where are you?
Yeah.
You're teaching here.
Right.
You seem to have no prospects of leaving.
Right.
And so you're saying she's talking about herself on some level because she's looking at her own future down the line and hating it. She is not happy where she is.
Well, it's all, and she has that moment where Angela Pizzo does a great job of giving her these lines where she exposes this idea of the small town, right? Yeah. It's still, even nowadays, we have that terrible term flyover state, right? This idea that the Midwest is always forgotten, right? It's a small town. The train doesn't even stop here. Like this whole idea of it being, this place doesn't even show up on most people's maps. That's her line, right? It's because she's forgotten. This is forgotten. And we find out later that she's come to this running from her having been in the big city, having had a relationship fall apart and coming back to a place of comfort for her. And yeah, you're right, Steve. I think there's a lot going on for her as an actress, as a character as well, that she's processing and using Jimmy in a way to negotiate that or work that out.
Because you don't respond to a stranger who just walked into a place with that level of negativity unless you got some stuff going on.
Exactly.
You know,
or you're assuming a lot about what they're going to do without even talking to them first.
Right.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And she completely undercuts him as a human being, like that he's here. You know, she's not supportive of a man who's fallen down and is trying to climb back up. She cuts his legs out from under him with that line. And he's strong enough to withstand it, but it's still a powerful line, man.
And I think this brings us to a fundamental point about this film.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure where I was going to bring it up, but what this film, to me, one of the main things it's about is what is of value to us.
Yeah.
And what she is saying is the idea of winning in that moment, as we discussed, that everybody thinks that's of value, and that actually isn't of value.
Right.
And we see with Shooter the consequences of someone who's put everything in that moment.
Yeah.
And we see with Gene Hackman, as we're going to learn a little bit later, of what his desire to win has done to him.
Right.
And so there's this other value, which I think the film really becomes about, which is there value in teamwork apart from winning?
Right.
Is there value in coaching apart from winning?
Yeah.
Is there value? So whatever happens with that moment, what do we get out of it?
Yeah.
And I think the exploration of that is something that's really important, but it's also really subtle in the film.
Yeah.
Like this film isn't pushing a message at you. Well, it is some. I mean, like definitely teamwork is definitely a message in here.
Sure.
Hard work is definitely a message. You know, that's true.
But it's an inherent message. It's not an overt message.
Yeah, I mean, well, no, I think it's fairly overt, but it's, because he's saying teamwork, over and over and over.
Four passes.
Yeah.
Right. Then we get to the team rally. And they're all, which is kind of a depressing team rally because
it's horrible.
Initially they're cheering and they come running out and you see the nervousness of these guys, right? Which is so great to see this on these actors and these high school players. They're wearing their gold, the yellow gold outfits, and they're running out. Ollie misses his layup, which is perfect, and just gives you that idea. And so they're all come running out, and then they have the microphone set up. They're standing there, and all of a sudden, just real quietly, which is what fans do sometimes, this chant starts up, "We want Jimmy. We want Jimmy. We want Jimmy." And Hackman, who had been on the sidelines, walks out to the mic.
This moment is horrible, by the way.
Yes, it is.
The disrespect and the cruelty of "We want Jimmy" with those guys standing out there is awful.
Yeah, it's basically saying you guys are you're not going to win.
Yeah,
you guys are not enough.
We don't care about
win.
you.
Yeah,
you don't represent us.
Right, you're not enough to win. We need Jimmy.
Yeah.
And we want Jimmy. And so Hackman comes out, which is great. Once again, he has these incredible moments throughout the film that establish him as a guy trying to do the right thing by these kids.
Absolutely.
And he says,
I would hope you would support who we are, not who we are not. These 6 individuals have made a choice to work, a choice to sacrifice, to put themselves on the line 23 nights in the next 4 months. To represent you, this high school. That kind of commitment and effort deserves and it demands your respect.
It's a great speech.
Yeah.
And
this is your team.
Yeah. And what's great is and this is what's hard with his character.
Yeah.
He is saying exactly the right thing.
Yes.
And the thing he's saying out of compassion and the right moral stance.
Yes.
And it does not endear him to this town.
No. It feels very angry.
And it's just like...
And disciplinary. It's almost disciplinary.
He scolds them.
Yeah. And this is where the military thing comes into play, too. He scolds them because that's the military. That's how military does it.
Yeah,
Like,
because they're wrong.
Well, you need right, and you need to do this.
Yeah.
You know, and they cast the extras from all the local high schools, local areas, and all the kind of jazz. Put them, which I think is great, and it gives that real authenticity to the film.
Absolutely.
All right, so then we get the first game. Right, they're coming in, and you know he's got Cletus as assistant coach, the principal, to just let you know, like,
just to sit there,
what kind of town this is, right? This is how small this town is, and we see this whole thing, and this is such a great exploration of what this. It's you would think in a sports movie, the first game, you know, he's been teaching them fundamentals, he's been doing these kinds of things, that they're all going to come together and have this fantastic first game, and it's all going to work. And the exact opposite happens, and they're like losing, and they're turning the ball over. They're not able to function as a team yet, which is going to happen. Even the vaunted Miami Heat, when Dwayne Wade and LeBron James and Chris Bosh came together, had trouble gelling. No matter who the stars are, basketball styles, you have to play in game to understand and learn how your teammates move and function with an offense, especially when you're installing a new offense like Hackman was doing with these kids. There are going to be growing pains. That's part of it. And that first half of that, when we see in the game, shows you the growing pains. And the townsfolk now have the ammunition they need to crucify him, right? They go after him. They're yelling at him. What are you doing?
Well, because what Hackman is asking to do is make four passes before you shoot the ball. That he wants them to be a ball movement team, not a shooters team,
right?
You know, and you could see from the perspective of the crowd why they aren't happy.
Yeah,
is that nobody's shooting the ball, which is what they came to expect. It's not working. Right. Their defense isn't setting up right.
Nope.
And you could see the failure. And one of the things I love, and again, it's how good an actor Hackman is you can see his real nervousness, his discomfort, his frustration. Yeah. You know, he is not the calm, cool, collected coach. I know what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be right, but it's still, it doesn't always feel that way.
Right. All right, so they go to halftime, right? And on the heels of this terrible first half where they're not gelling and they've turned the ball over and the crowd's turned on them, and Hackman walks in there, and the door isn't even closed for more than a few seconds before that sheriff comes barreling and starts yelling at Gene Hackman, asking him what he's doing. Cletus stops him, ushers him out, and Hackman says to Cletus, like,
I don't want anybody in this locker room at halftime. I'll keep him out of here.
All right. I'm trying hard to believe that you know what you're doing.
And Hackman, in his defiance, I love this. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, right?
But in that defiance is the inscrity.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's what's
which is
so
why
great
he's
about
high pitched.
Hackman. Yeah.
Which is why he's high pitched. Yeah. And so he's telling them the four passes and everything. Four passes and everything like that. What do I want to see out there? Four passes.
And they say 4 passes.
Yeah, right.
And what's so great about it, and what's really good in our young sort of unknown actors, is the anger towards Hackman is very, very clear, because what he's asking them to do at this point feels like losing.
Yes.
And it feels like losing in defiance of the crowd that has turned on them.
Which is their townsfolk.
Their
dads and moms.
You're filled with hatred towards them. And now they have to go and do it again. And so it's perfectly understandable why Raid, is that his name?
Raid, yeah.
Raid says, I got a shot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take it.
He starts taking because he wants that love. And he's a young kid. He's a high school kid.
And he has the shot.
Yes, he has the shot. And he makes them.
And he makes them.
Yeah.
And what does the crowd think?
They love it. Because he's making the baskets.
Yeah.
Right?
So what does Hackman do when he makes a shot?
I think initially he is accepting and understanding that it's an impertinence of a young kid. And then takes him out of the game.
Takes him out of the game.
Benches him.
And so if you're at a game and the one guy that started making shots gets pulled out, and you're in the crowd, how do you feel?
Yeah, they get upset. But they still pat him on the back as he's walking by. But the kid knows he messed up.
Yeah.
Right? He has that look on his face. He is a kid always knows when they've messed up.
It's hard to feel like you messed up when you just made a basket.
It's true, but you can see the look on his face that he knows he's being benched because Normandale's mad at him.
And all he goes in, and what's the next thing that happens? Guy fouls out.
So Raid automatically jumps up, starts running back in the game, pulling off his jersey, and Hackman says, "Where are you going?"
No, what's interesting, because it's a really nice moment.
Yeah.
He doesn't jump up right away.
Oh yeah, he looks over. He
looks at Hackman.
Why aren't you calling me?
You should send me in.
Yeah, you should send me in.
Then he kind of goes, I guess I should just go in on my own.
Yeah.
And so he starts getting in, and then Hackman says, "Where are you going?"
I love this. One of my favorite line deliveries.
Sit down.
I just love the way he says that to him. Sit down.
And the ref comes over, like, you're going to present another player? And I think, what does he say?
My team's on the floor.
My team's on the floor.
Yeah.
That's
Defiance.
some good coach. We got only 4 players, and the crowd is furious. And
Yes.
you cut around to different reaction shots, and you see Barbara Hershey, who has sort of a odd reaction shot. She's not angry because she doesn't care about basketball. And then you cut to Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
And he is smiling.
Yep.
And that is so important because you see, of all the people in the gym, Dennis Hopper understands. It's really important.
You're right. You're right. He knows exactly why he's doing what he's doing, and he respects it because he has that little head like he has that little head shake and smile.
Great reaction shot.
Absolutely. And he does this great character. He does this great physical moment where he has the game plan in his little like folder, and he shakes the folder at the crowd. Like, you guys will see. You guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You guys will see.
Or just, I'm the coach.
Yeah. I think it's saying,
I think you're right.
But he's certainly saying, you'll see. It's once again, we had this idea. He has these principles, these moments where his principles are tested, and he will not divert from them. He will not be moved away from them because he knows what works.
What's interesting up to this point, and you're with Hackman.
Yeah.
You agree with him.
I do.
What's interesting, thinking about the movie more, is that up to this point, he is completely rigid.
Yes.
In his principles.
Yes.
He is inflexible, and I will say to a fault.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Well, we're going to see what happens when we get to the end of the movie.
Right. That's a good point.
Is that he is just, when a guy comes off the court and says, hey, this guy's doing this, he says, you don't talk.
Yeah.
I talk.
Right.
He is completely inflexible.
Yeah. So then we go back into the locker room. The game's over. They've obviously lost.
Yeah.
They go in the locker room, and Hackman and Norman Dale is like,
Those of you on the floor at the end, I'm proud of you. Played your guts out. I'm only going to say this one time. All of you have the weekend. Think about whether or not you want to be on this team or not. Under the following condition. What I say when it comes to this basketball team is the law. Absolutely and without discussion.
which I've heard in numerous situations at high school. I've heard stories from other people who've had this experience. And that's what happens. You get tested.
Yeah.
This is the deal. Are you in or are you out? You know? What do you think about that?
I agree.
Okay. And what he said,
Sorry,
what he says, what I say about this team is the law.
Yeah.
And that's I love.
In that way that only Hackman can do it.
Nobody screams better than Hackman. Not even Pacino. Nobody screams better than Hackman on screen.
Well, I don't know. We had to have I have to go through and think about that. Hackman's is really good.
He's the best.
Yeah, he's really good.
All right, so then we go to the next day, or probably a couple days later. You know, it's Monday morning in the town, and like you know, there he walks by the hair cutter or whatever, the barber that's there, and hair cutter, Jesus, the barber that's there, and they make the joke. So you're going to try to win with 3 next time, you know. So he's getting these barbs, right? Yeah. And then he runs into Barbara Hershey's mom, Myra Fleener's mom, and she is once again, she's one of these tough country women.
Good character.
She's carrying bags of feed into her truck, and she says,
Sun don't shine on the same dog's ass every day, but, mister, you ain't seen a ray of light since you got here. I believe it's time we had a talk.
So she invites him to dinner, right? So they have dinner, and Barbara Hershey is totally, Myra Fleener is totally resisted this idea, and she gives him a look before she jumps into the truck, and they
end up having a nice conversation. It's a really nice scene with him and Barbara Hershey.
Yes.
And they sort of, you know.
Yeah, it's the thawing of the relations.
Yeah, it's not thawed.
No.
But it is warmed up a little bit.
Yes, right.
Every game my brother ever played was the most important thing ever happened to this family. Mother would be able to sleep the night before. And if they lost, Daddy'd walk the floor until morning. I just could never figure out why it meant so much, not to that extreme. I don't get it.
Well, what are you doing here? Living in Hickory.
I haven't always been here. Went to college 3 years, graduate school a year.
Graduate school?
Surprised? You sound like my father. He thought it strange I ever wanted to leave town. Kept telling me I'd be back. Of course, he was right.
Why'd you come back?
Didn't work out. Daddy died, Mother got sick, I had to come back.
But it's very interesting because and that's when she like kind of opens up, and and this is when you connect with people, is when they talk about their lives and their past, and and she's talking the reason, and you start to understand Myra Fleener, her anger too, because she's a bit jealous that her brother was the star of the house. Everybody lived and died by his basketball games. Nobody lived and died by Barbara Hershey's accomplishments as a student, or as when she got to the big town, the big city, and did what she did there. Nobody lived and died by that. They all lived and died. And what she said, Dad would pace the floor till morning, or Mom would pace the floor till morning. That's how deep Indiana basketball is.
And by the way, I totally agree with her about the disproportional nature of certain sports, or even disproportional nature of sports.
Sure.
It's like if you're on the college football team, and someone else is on the college water polo team.
Sure. And
you are the best, your college water polo team is number one in the country, and your football team sucks.
Yeah.
You get no attention on that water polo team.
Nobody cares.
No one cares.
Yeah,
and I remember being in the college theater department, and I was sitting there thinking, like, okay, the sports industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and people who are the best people coming out of college sports get people scouting them for millions and millions of dollars.
Yes.
The entertainment industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry where people get paid millions of dollars, but nobody comes to scout the theater program to find their next star.
Well, agents do. They do showcases.
Yeah, not if you went to Cal.
Oh, really? They didn't do showcases?
We might have done a showcase, but it's not. There is no comparison between who came to the Cal football game, and who came to the Cal theater.
Well, because you can go watch these games constantly, as opposed to productions which are every 6 months or every 4 months, whereas games are every week or twice a week sometimes. So there's more opportunity.
I'm just pointing out that that it is disproportionate.
Well, that's fair.
Is that there's a lot of attention paid to a very small number of people in a very small number of sports, and they're all sorts of high school kids who are doing awesome science fairs and poetry readings, and nobody cares about.
Yeah, because no one's buying a ticket to see this guy do his science.
I return to actors where they do, or band. Yeah, musicians, people spend lots of money on.
What are we working? Steve, what are we working out here?
and I'm going to take it one step further.
Yes,
science fair, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, millions and millions of dollars.
Absolutely,
do not get the attention in high school that the football player does.
They don't.
All right. Maybe I'm sorry. I feel better.
No, I'm glad we worked it all out.
I'm glad you let me lay down on the couch while I did that, because I felt more relaxed. Okay.
All right. So Shooter comes to visit Normandale. He is just having a conversation, right? What did you feel about that?
When Shooter comes to visit?
Yeah.
It's not just having a conversation.
Right.
He is a drunk guy with a mission.
He is.
You're playing Cedar Knob tomorrow. Ain't nobody knows them better than me. I've been watching how you've been breaking the Colts. But my friend, you cannot play them all the way man on man. They got no head toppers. Cedar Knob, a bunch of mites. Run you off the boards. You got to squeeze them back in the paint. Make them chuck it from the cheap seats. Watch that purgatory they call a gym. No drive, 12 foot in. That'll do.
What I love, again, is Gene Hackman's performance.
Yeah.
Is Gene Hackman's, who has been pressured by everybody in the town, saying, I know better than you. He doesn't have that reaction to Dennis Hopper.
No.
He knows, and Dennis Hopper says a thing, I see how you're trying to break the Colts.
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment where he goes, oh, somebody understands what I'm doing.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, I don't understand really what Shooter said.
Right.
But he understands that Shooter actually knows what he's talking about.
Well, and this is what's ironic about the Shooter character, because the Shooter character is the one that softens the edges of Hackman's coaching, of Normandale's coaching. Not Hackman as an actor, but Normandale's a coach, right? Because he says to him, I see how you're breaking the young Colts, but there's another way to do it. He's trying to tell him that he's being a little too hard on the kids because he expects them to be college-level players in high school.
Well, and he's also saying that in relationship to the next game you have, what you're doing isn't the right fit.
Yes.
You know,
and that's where Hackman starts to, or Normandale starts to see that, oh, this guy could be a scout, because he has played all these high schools and he has watched every game, and he's familiar with the coaches, because back then high school coaches coached for 30 years the same team. It wasn't about like, it wasn't like it is now, which is like 5 years then you're out and stuff like that if you don't win, So then the next game they're playing away, and once again Ray talks too much, gets benched, but Buddy is back out of nowhere.
Right.
Which is one of these deleted scenes that if you have the Blu-ray or the DVD, you can see the scene where Buddy comes back. It's not that integral to the scene, but Buddy is back. So you assume, and we accept that, he got it, and maybe Norman Dale reached out and was like, come back to the team.
Which is funny, hard for me who hasn't seen it a whole lot, because I'm like, which one is the guy that left? And we seem to have 7 players now, but I don't remember which is the,
Is the one with the crew top. With the crew
no,
top.
it happens because I kind of watched it twice, so now I recognize it.
Right.
But the first time I wasn't sure.
Right. So then we have this situation where they're playing in the gym. They get into these foul situations, and Hackman has his altercation with the other coach.
It's bad enough we got to play in this cage you call a gym. Your players are playing like a bunch of gorillas.
And the player, one of the opposing team's player, pokes Gene Hackman in the. This is an adult. He's poking an adult in the chest. He says, "Who are you calling a gorilla?"
And then out of nowhere,
you for one. And then he goes bust off. And then out of nowhere, Raid comes in with a punch. The player that he had, who was not listening to him, he was the most difficult to discipline, is the one who steps up in his defense to defend him.
Yeah.
It's just so great. And then the ref kicks them both out. And then as they're walking off, they have this like connection moment, right? Where he starts to understand Raid has this desire to be successful as well as Gene. It's just that it's going to take a little bit of time to get him to.
Well, and he says something like, "I got him a good one, didn't I, Coach?"
And he smiles.
And Gene Hackman's like, "Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did." Which is a great connective moment. I love that. But we see the first allusions to the principal having issues with his heart because he's left there alone in the gym, and you see him kind of stumble a little bit.
Funny. So, like I said, I hadn't seen it in forever.
Yeah.
So when I'm watching this, I was just like, "Oh shit, is he going to die?"
Right.
I'm really glad he didn't die.
No, I am too,
because I didn't want to be in that movie.
No.
But there's that moment because you see someone go in a movie. That guy's having a heart attack.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And the next,
there's certain clues in movies. Like if you see a woman feel queasy, she's pregnant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's very clear.
Or you see a woman's animated woman stumbling up a hill, she's gonna die. And it's gonna fuck with you and make you cry like crazy when you go see Up. So anyway, we have that's fucking that movie. All right, so we have the sick principal. He goes, the next shot is Gene running up the stairs to go see Cletus. Cletus in the bed, and great little moment from that actress.
Very nice,
And the actress playing Cletus's wife.
Just a little while, okay?
Yeah. Oh man, heartbreaking every time. And so they have this conversation, and he says to him, I feel like I'm leaving you alone.
Oh, that's fine.
You kind of like being on your own.
Kind of like see you up on your feet.
You can count on us.
Oh, I do want to make one last thing to reference to Cletus. What's so great about Cletus at the beginning of the movie, and this is a small little thing, Steve, he is meditating. He is meditating when Gene Hackman walks up to him at the beginning of the movie finds him. Yes, he's in front of the air conditioner, and he says, "What were you doing?" "I was floating." He's meditating.
You're right.
In 1951, a film shot in 1986, he is meditating. And I think it's fantastic. And I think that speaks to he is a progressive guy, which is why he pulled Hackman to come coach.
Yeah, totally.
He is an outside-of-the-box guy. And so he was, I'm floating. That's essentially meditation. So it was brilliant. It was fucking brilliant. Anyway, all right, so now we get this idea. Now he's going to get Shooter as assistant coach. And he goes to him and he tells him that he's got to stay sober. Which Shooter's initially excited at the opportunity, and then he says to him, you got to clean up, you got to stay sober. And as most alcoholics do, Shooter takes offense to it.
I have to hear that from you. You're embarrassing your son. I don't need to hear that. I'd like you to leave. I'd like you to leave now.
What I like so much about the scene, and I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you've had hard conversations with friends or with
and friends have had hard conversations with me.
Yeah, is that what I love about the way it's written and the way Gene Hackman plays it is he knows that the thing he has to say is you have to stay sober.
Yes,
but he doesn't start with that.
No,
he goes, well, you're gonna have to wear a suit.
Yeah, wear a suit.
You're gonna get cleaned up.
Yeah,
and you got to show up on time.
Yeah, and
what you could see is, how am I gonna stay sober?
He's building up to it.
He's trying to get there, and he finally gets there.
Yeah,
and I love and I agree with Shooter. You can't talk to me like this because if someone's gonna have that kind of conversation with you, they got to be one of your people. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is essentially a stranger who's telling him to quit drinking.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean,
I see your point of view. I don't agree.
Well, it's not that I'm saying that coach is wrong.
No. I'm not saying you are.
I'm saying I understand Shooter's feelings of like, who is this guy coming into my most intimate moment? And then the line that is crushing.
Yeah.
You're embarrassing your son.
Yeah. That's where he walks across the line, in my opinion. That's where I think Shooter is valid to kick him out. That's where he takes liberty. But their family is their basketball guys. And let me tell you something, Steve. Basketball guys understand basketball guys. It's a family.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the family that he's operating from, right? That's the place he's coming from, because he's not offering him a job to be his assistant as a teacher. He's offering him a job to be assistant as a basketball coach. Right. And so he knows basketball people know basketball people, and he's trying to approach him that way. And you're right. So he butters him up, and he has to say that, and it's really hard. And he crosses that line.
But that is the line if he doesn't say that line, Shooter's not going to come in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big line.
What do you think is motivation? Like, this is good. This is a good place to ask this question. Like you asked about Chitwood. What is his motivation when he's asking Jimmy? When he tells him he doesn't care if he plays on the team or not. What is his motivations here? What do you think his motivations are here when he's talking to Shooter? Yeah, Norman Dale.
I find it really hard to take apart. Okay. Because I think it's on several levels.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not mercenary of, I need this guy to win.
Right.
I don't think that's enough of a motivation for him to get the town drunk to come on his bench.
Yeah.
Because he knows, he's smart enough and experienced enough to know that this is fraught with peril.
Yes.
In all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
So and he's arrogant enough that he believes that he knows everything about basketball anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it can't be about that. And I think about those 12 years of regret after he had to leave basketball.
Yeah.
And I think about his pain, and I think about his recovery in this moment.
Yeah.
And I think he sees, not that he was a drunk like Shooter, but he spent the last 12 years thinking about one moment too.
Yeah.
And he knows what it can do to a person.
Yeah.
You know, there's this moment in the West Wing that I love where Josh has like PTSD.
Oh yeah.
And Leo is a former alcoholic. And Josh has just gone through his big therapy episode, which is with Adam Arkin, which is a fantastic episode of television. And Leo walks up to him. He'd been waiting for him all day to come out. And Josh says, "What are you doing here?" And Leo says,
"This guy's walking down the street when he falls in the hole. The walls are so steep he can't get out. A doctor passes by and the guy shouts up, 'Hey, you, can you help me out?' The doctor writes a prescription, throws it down in the hole, and moves on. Then a priest comes along and the guy shouts up, 'Father, I'm down in this hole, can you help me out?' The priest writes out a prayer, throws it down in the hole, and moves on. Then a friend walks by. 'Hey, Joe, it's me, can you help me out?' And the friend jumps in the hole. Our guy says, 'Are you stupid? Now we're both down here.' The friend says, 'Yeah, but I've been down here before and I know the way out.' Long as I got a job, you got a job, you understand?"
Damn.
And this is some great Sorkin writing.
Right. Yeah.
And there's something about this moment of, not that Coach is exposing himself quite in that way.
Right.
But of him going, I know what it's like. I've been here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to help you to get out.
Right.
And I think, I think that's what it is.
I agree with you. And I think it's once again, this is a very complex character in Norman Dale. This is a guy who we find out later did punch one of his players, a college player. But he has a good heart. He has a benevolent heart in this way. He sees, and this is men. Men understand men, right? Men understand the pain of men, right? He sees this. He sees a connection with this guy because this guy could climb out of it, right? If he wanted to. Maybe. So he wants to help him climb out of it as much as possible. He wants to give him a motivation to climb out of it. I think there's a benevolence in that. So then we cut to, we don't think he's going to come, and then Shooter shows up at the game.
Right.
He's got shaved. He's got his hair matted down. He's wearing the suit that he was married in. He looks really nice. And then Hackman is like surprised to see him, and he sits down. And so is Everett, his son, is surprised to see him. And he's
not in a good way.
Not in a good way, right? Exactly. Yeah. But like the pounding of the gym is
you could feel the weight on Everett of this gym.
Yes.
And the crowd
Yeah.
Not pleased.
Not happy to see Shooter there. And you know, Dennis Hopper does a great job of you know, it's all affecting him.
Well, if you think about it, I'm one of these townspeople who just all we've wanted to do is be involved in the game.
Yes.
And you pick the drunk?
The town drunk.
To sit down there? Come on.
The fallen star.
I ain't feeling real good. You'll be fine. The kids are starting to get it. I mean, it's really fun.
Later on, they're at the school. Everett waits after, you know, and it was great because Ollie's doing his like book report, in essence, his like stand-up report, which I remember those days of doing those reports in high school.
I hope yours was a little better than Ollie's.
Yeah, I hope mine was too. I don't remember. But then Everett waits after him and says,
Coach, what you're doing with my dad, I'm not seeing it.
Why not?
Because he's a drunk. He'll do something stupid.
When's the last time somebody gave him a chance?
You don't deserve a chance.
and that's a really powerful moment, right? And then Hershey walks in, and so he ushers Everett out, and he says, like, you know, just we'll talk later. And Hershey comes in and tells him, you know, that
by the way, this is the Hackman doesn't talk any more to him than that.
No,
that's the whole scene, and it's surprising to me, and maybe that's the right thing. Of I'm not going to sit down and talk to you about your dad. Of course not. I'm going to let you stew on it and think about it. And
he's still teaching these kids. He's teaching these kids even when they're not on the court with him.
But if you had me as a teacher, you would realize that I don't shut the fuck up ever. I'll keep talking to you forever. And there's a lot to learn from Mr. Hackman of like, no, don't say that.
Right.
Just shut up.
Yeah.
Shutting up's not my strong suit.
Well, something you brought up earlier, he cut out lines
from
the movie because he knows it doesn't need it. Yeah. All right, so then Barbara Hershey, boss of Meyer Freeland, comes up and tells him, you know, there's going to be a vote to see if they want to kick him off as like fire him as coach.
Yeah,
right. And she says, I don't think you should be there. It's not going to be pretty.
Yeah,
right.
And he says, I guess I got one game to prove
myself.
myself.
I got one to prove myself.
So we're putting a lot of pressure on this game.
Yeah, but she
says, the game going to go well?
No, I don't think so. But she does say, I think it goes deeper than one game, don't you? Which is a great line.
Yeah,
you know.
So
So the game happens, and what does he do? He gets himself kicked out of the game.
Yeah.
Right? And Shooter has to coach the game, and Shooter falls apart at the first time to step up. And he sinks back. And Everett, which is great. That actor does such a great job as his
really
son.
Good.
Just kind of deflates, right? Because he knows that's what's going to happen. And we start to see that, you start to wonder if he's going to stay on as a coach, right? As an audience, we're wondering, is he going to stay on as a coach? Maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. And that ref kicks him out. Like, that ref kicks him out for no reason at all.
Very quickly.
Yeah, there's no reason at all. And it's sometimes your reputation precedes you. And when you come in from outside, there are people who don't want to treat you nicely.
And I think at the beginning of the movie, when he kicks dads out, when he's saying we focus on fundamentals, you're like, this guy knows what he's doing.
Right.
And when he plays with four people, you're like, wow, this guy's got balls, but he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
There's a certain point where you start to go, does he know what he's doing? I mean, it's not that I'm doubting him, but you start to doubt. You start to be nervous.
Of course.
When he gets kicked out of that game and Shooter's left all alone.
Yeah.
And we're halfway through the movie now, and it's sort of like, man, maybe he doesn't. Maybe something's wrong.
Yeah. Then we cut to Gene Hackman out in the fields by this post. Myra Fleener walks up. You know, Barbara Hershey walks up. And she pulls out this piece of paper that's been folded into like 7 or 8 different squares and then reads it to him. And it's the first time we hear as an audience that the reason why he stopped coaching at Ithaca. And it was because he punched a player.
Norman Dale, coach of the national champions Ithaca Warriors, was given a lifetime suspension to be honored by all NCAA signatories for physically assaulting his own player in Ithaca's last season's game. This was the latest in a series of controversial incidents involving the successful, though highly volatile, coach. The New York High School Athletic Association has stated they will honor the suspension as well.
I love that she reads the article.
Yeah. But the real reason she came is that this vote is coming up, and she doesn't think he should be there.
I want to tell you that I think your efforts in regards to Shooter have been noble. They've been fine. And I appreciate you staying away from Jimmy the way you have. I don't think you better be there tonight. It won't be pleasant.
All right, so then we have we go to the town hall. And it's a great town hall. I mean, it's a beautiful old wood in the. I think they're in a church or someplace, and Normandale is there. He did not show up as she suggested. Barbara Hershey walks up and gives a speech to defend Coach Dale. You know, Chelsea Ross there is like, you know, leading the pitchfork and fire crew to fire Gene Hackman, Normandale, and Barbara Hershey steps up, gives this speech to defend him. And it's almost painful for her.
Hold on.
Good, doesn't it?
She doesn't get up to give the speech to defend him. She gets up and pulls out the piece of paper to read the article condemning him. She pulls out that same piece of paper, and she is about to read the same article about him punching a kid, and she changes her mind.
Is that what you think?
I am certain of it.
Wow.
I've
seen this movie a million times, and I never thought that she was. I thought she'd just written down her speech because she's this kind of person who carries stuff.
I mean,
I'll watch it again.
I would defer to you. Well, you want to watch it again.
Sometimes new eyes can see a film and catch stuff.
I am 90% certain that's what she's about.
And she just changes her mind in that moment and gives an impromptu speech.
Yes.
This prepared woman.
Yes. Okay. That is what I believe.
Okay.
Now I'm really curious. And you are out there listening to this.
Yeah.
Go out and check it out. But I was so sure that's what happens.
Wow. You might be right. You might 100% be right.
Yeah.
I thought she wrote the speech down because she keeps looking at it as she's talking.
Yeah.
And so I think
we might have to put it in after we're done with the podcast. I'm kind of curious about this moment now.
We might have to. So and what's great is that she has this moment with her mom too, because she comes back to sit down next to her mom and her mom puts her hand on her arm, which is a way of showing support for her that she did something like that. And then they do the vote. And
Normandale says a nice speech, which again does not give them a lot of room to like him.
Oh, no.
It is really good, but he also says, I apologize for nothing.
I was hired to teach the boys a game of basketball, and I did that to the best of my ability. I apologize for nothing. You may not be pleased with the results, but I am. I'm very proud of these boys.
He's not an easy guy. No. He's not making
because he knows he's right.
Yes.
And these people need to understand.
Here's another thing. And this goes to like directing and leadership in general.
Yeah.
Is that part of him making that team good is dependent upon the goodwill of the town. So you're not just, I mean, you think about every coach, particularly in college sports, is that they have to go to the alumni association meetings. They have to go talk to the press. They have to do, and if they do those things wrong, it will adversely affect their ability to play the game.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, so like on one level, he's just like, I am right. But on another level, it's like, if I can get you guys to help me and make me seem, this is the thing I think about directing all the time. I will happily look wrong to have someone else think that they're right in order to get what I want. The point is not for me to be right. I mean, I know I'm right.
That's what I'm saying.
But I don't need to say it. And this happens like if I'm talking, it's like I want to get the actor to think they came up with the idea themselves.
Right.
I don't need to tell them what to do.
Right.
Is that I will happily have you think I'm wrong on a small point so I can win the big one. Because if that makes your ego feel bad, I mean you, but if that makes one's ego feel better
royal you,
for that, and I can get the big thing that I want, great. He is not working with this town.
No.
I love the movie. It's not a criticism of the movie.
No.
It's saying this guy, if he had been a little softer, he might not have been about to be fired right now.
Yeah, but then we don't have a movie.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
No, because I think this conflict is very important to the movie because fans are fickle. Townspeople are fickle. He is an oak tree in the middle.
Absolutely.
He is and you need that because sometimes the fickle you cannot give into the whims of the fans or the whims of the townsfolk. You have to do what you think is right because at the end of the day, you're the only one that can look yourself in the mirror and go, did I do everything possible in my way to help this team win? If I gave in on certain moments, if I gave in and sacrificed my personal idea of what would work and what doesn't work, then I haven't done it my way.
What if one of the things that would help the team win would be to play a little nicer with the parents?
We don't see any example of him playing mean with the parents. Like, he's never mean to the Reverend.
He's hard.
He's hard, but we never see him like yelling at anybody's kid,
No.
anybody's parents, or tell them, you raised a shitty kid. He even makes the parent of one of those kids who ran out, the gizzard guy. He made him his assistant coach as the show as the film.
I'm not criticizing the movie. Yeah, it's a great movie. What I'm saying is just as a leadership.
Yeah.
In a leadership situation, is that you got to look at all of your chess pieces.
Right.
And the town dads are some of your chess pieces. And if you alienate them, they're going to be against you from the beginning.
Right.
And if you can somehow, without sacrificing your practice,
right,
saying this is how we're going to play the game,
right,
but play a little softer with them and bring them around, you might not be standing in the town hall about to be fired.
Sure.
And the worst thing that could possibly happen to these kids is, and for the team, is you being fired.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But what we're about to see happen here is your argument against it, which is that Jimmy shows up.
Absolutely.
And the reason Jimmy shows up is because Coach Normandale hasn't sacrificed his principles.
100% agree.
And he has that moment. So he's basically, his ass is pulled out of the fire by Jimmy. They have taken a vote. Chelsea Ross is ecstatic that the coach is fired. And then Jimmy shows up.
I don't know if it'll make any change, but I figure it's time for me to start playing ball.
Right, everyone's excited because they think it's because Normandale got fired. And Chelsea Ross even says,
Got rid of him. One other thing. I play, coach stays. He goes, I go.
and it's great. Like Jimmy just walks up, says one line.
One of his four or whatever.
And I love Chelsea Ross's face from the excitement to
falls.
Complete and utter, just his face falls apart. And then he tries in vain to reinforce the original vote. And then that dad who had been there earlier, that big guy, calls for a revote.
Yep.
And they vote to keep him in. And then we get the 80s montage, sports montage. Da, 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 da. Amazing Jerry Goldsmith score, which was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
You know what's funny?
score. Yeah.
It's probably my least favorite Jerry Goldsmith score.
You're out of your fucking mind. Steve Morris, that score is beautiful.
I didn't say it's a bad score. I love Jerry Goldsmith. But when you compare it to Planet of the Apes and Patton, and there's just a lot more that I like more.
You're out of your mind. That score is so good.
Patton?
It inspires you. It lifts you up.
It's a really good score. There are parts of it I think that are great, but it's not that I think it's bad.
You're just not a sports guy, man. You're a martial arts guy. You're not a sports guy, man.
Martial arts not sport?
Well, you need to feel that in your bones, man. This score is, as obviously this is a film that's subjective. Scores are subjective, obviously. But for me, it is one of the most inspirational scores because it's just so, it gets you, it just lifts you up, man. Excites you.
I can't name every Jerry Goldsmith score, but I could probably name 3 or 4 I like better. That's all
fair.
I'm saying.
That's fair.
Maybe not Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Maybe that one I like less than this.
Is that Giacchino or is that Goldsmith?
No, that's
Goldsmith.
Goldsmith.
Motion picture.
Motion picture is
2009 is Giacchino.
Yeah.
All right, so we have this whole idea of like the montage and everything's happening. We hear and they're starting to win now, right? Because the team's coming in. Jimmy's on the team. We have he's drying out Shooter by like dunking his face in the water and pulling him back out. And he says, "I didn't think I could do it, but a team of wild horses couldn't drag me away. Right? You're going to sober up, you know."
Well, but this is a key thing too. Is that can't be too good.
Yes.
Is that we can't just be woohoo, we're winning.
We can't be winning by 40 points.
Yeah, because it's also like Shooter's little twitches and stuff remind you it's not all perfect.
Yes.
Which is really important.
Right. Because Shooter's like, he promises Shooter he's not going to get thrown out.
Scout's honor.
Yeah, Scout's honor, right? Which is Scout's honor, which is a great moment, right? And then, of course, the next game, he gets thrown out, right? And he does it on purpose.
On purpose.
Yeah, which is great. And I love that scene with the ref. Once again, this film is littered with these amazingly good actors in these very small moments that really, like, just bring the film to life. And he says to him,
"Kick me out of the game.
You put me on.
No, kick me out of the game. I'm going to start screaming like a mad fool."
Well, I guess you got your reasons. You're out of here.
and he kicks him out. And Hackman does the overacting that he does. "Oh, come on, blah, blah, blah." And he immediately shifts gears and tells him, "Well, I did it again. Sorry." Yeah. And this time...
Not a good Boy Scout.
No, not a good... Right. And this time, Shooter really steps up and does the picket fence, which is one of the greatest like old school plays ever.
Right.
And he has a great line where he says...
"Now, boys, Don't get caught watching a paint dry.
And it's just a great little moment. Once again, Angelo Pizzo does such a great job in creating this, like, just, you know, people spoke like this back then. And it's just, it feels so real, you know, and it's great to have that moment. And you have this kind of slowly coming together of Everett with his dad, where he has this, where he's like, they're all celebrating when they hit the game winning shot. And then they all turn around, Shooter and Everett turn around at the same time and face each other. And he says to him, "You did good, Pop."
Great.
That's such a great moment. And then they run off the court. And Dennis Hopper, his hair flying. It's just great.
Great.
You know, even his body language as he's running is a person who's going to fall apart at any moment. The way he's running almost looks like a piece of glass.
Such a moment. It's such an important emotional moment to him.
Yes. Now we go to the sectional finals. You know, obviously they've done well enough that they're into the sectional finals. The pressure gets to Shooter. Everett doesn't know where his dad is. You know, Norman Dale is asking him, "Have you seen your father?" He's like, "No." And he's like, "Well, just keep your head in the game." And then Shooter shows up drunk when a foul is called. He stumbles out of the crowd, which is so sad.
It is so awful.
Yeah, he just stumbles out. And he just says like, "Oh, you know, you weren't in position to make the foul call. You know what you're talking about." Blah, blah, blah. And he, like, when they grab him, he's like looking at his hands, like, right, which is what you see drunks do sometimes, right? They'll do that when they're surprised at their ferocity at times. And so he gets ushered out and he says to him, like, you know, "Oh, he's an assistant coach. It's fine." And then he calls a technical.
Right.
Oh,
well, he's a coach.
Right. He's a coach.
And you just feel Everett.
Yeah.
You feel he's already been humiliated by his dad his whole life.
Yeah.
And then he's had this moment of believing in his dad.
Yes.
And now at the most important moment of his life, in
to this point,
in the most public way possible, his dad,
I know.
And the fact, again, because I hadn't seen it in a long time, and coach says to him, "Keep your head in the game."
Yeah.
And I'm going, how could he possibly?
Yeah.
How could he possibly stay in the game? And I'm thinking things are going to go, he's going to do something terrible. And yet he does keep his head in the game.
He does for the most part, but then they push Jimmy from behind. Right? The other team pushes Jimmy from behind on a layup. And then Everett, instead of just picking Jimmy up and confronting the guy, he immediately reacts by punching the kid in the face. It becomes a whole brawl. And then he himself, Everett, gets slammed into the glass case. And he gets cut up. And
yet, despite that, they managed to pull it together and win the game.
And then the next scene is them, Normandale and Everett running out trying to find Shooter, and they find him passed out in the frozen tundra.
I mean, he looks like
in the woods.
He's gonna die.
Yes.
I mean, if they don't find him right then, he's dead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is probably his guilt has overtaken him for embarrassing his son. So then he ends up in the hospital.
Right.
Wakes up, has all this stuff.
He's real bad shape.
Yeah, he's in real bad shape.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. Basketball meant so much to you, Coach. I'm so proud of you. I'm so sorry.
Come on, Shooter. Nothing could be further from the truth.
What I like about this, and I think a lot of this is Dennis Hopper's influence, is they don't treat addiction lightly.
Yeah.
Is that because the moment that he shows up dressed, you're like, oh, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And then the moment in particular where Gene Hackman gets kicked out of the game on purpose, you go, seems cinematically like he's conquered his alcoholism.
Yeah.
And what the movie says is no.
Yeah.
No, this is going to be a lot harder than that. And that's really that elevates the movie to a more serious level than it was before.
Well, yeah.
It's really important.
And I think you're right. I think this is Hopper's influence because he had been through rehab a few times. He knew exactly what he was talking about. All right, so then we have what? The locker room speech?
I'm sure going to the state finals is beyond your wildest dreams, so let's just keep it right there. Forget about the crowds, the size of the school, their fancy uniforms, and remember what got you here. Focus on the fundamentals, and most important, don't get caught up thinking about winning or losing this game. If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
It's a classic locker room speech.
Yeah.
I don't know what the best locker room speech of all time is, but this is in the list, I think.
The Pacino speech in Any Given Sunday is pretty
That's
damn
a great
good.
one.
The film is terrible, but that's a great speech.
Yeah. This is a really good one. And we go out to play our game.
You know, it's going back and forth. It's a tight game. There's about 2 minutes left, a little over 2 minutes left, and ever gets hurt. He gets hit from behind in slow motion. We see that his stitches have been ripped up. There's blood on the bandage. The doctor picks him up.
Hold it. The stitches are pulled.
Patch him up. Come on, patch him up.
I can't do it.
Patch him up!
Are you out of your mind?
And that's where you see the glimpse of the old Norman Dale. Win at any cost. I don't care what it takes. And then he starts to talk to Everett, like, so you stay in the game, blah, 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 you're going to be fine.
He sends him into the game.
Yeah, he sends him into the game.
Go into the game.
Yeah, and he gives him directions or instructions, sends him into the game, and then he has this moment, and it's great because they cut to Barbara Hershey judging from on high, right? Which is a great shot of her, like, really stone-faced and stoic, like, oh, maybe he hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And we get a glimpse into the old Norman Dale, and he has that conflict, and he like rubs his head, and then he spins around. He goes, nope, come back out.
Everett, you're on the bench.
I don't want to play.
Come on, you're on the bench.
It's such a great moment. We see we see the subtle shades of an arc in the Norman Dale character.
Yeah. To me, this moment is so important. It's critical to the film because the Norman that sends that kid in is the same Norman that punched that kid in the face.
Right.
That's the guy who wants to win at every cost.
Right.
And he knows it, and he stops.
Yeah.
And the power to stop your own internal instinct. Morality doesn't come easily.
Yeah.
Doing the right thing doesn't come easily. And the choice he is making right now is it's more important to take care of these kids than it is to win. This is huge.
It's huge. I agree with
huge.
I think it's the final moment where you are officially on board with him no matter what. Right? And
absolutely.
And it's great.
And the strap stuff really makes me smile.
I mean, just
it's
brilliant.
Great. His glee.
Yeah.
I felt God. And it's just great. I love it.
Well, feel him in the dribble, working on the dribble, right, which is great.
And then, but we're still not there.
Right.
We're still not there yet because now someone else is going to foul out.
Yes, someone's going to foul out, and Ollie's got to go in. I think it's Buddy who fouls out, and then Ollie's got to go in there. And of course, Ollie has resisted playing the whole time because he's so small, and they're not sure what he's going to do. And it's a close, tight game. And even before Ollie goes in, though, I love the moment of Strap doing a prayer on Ollie's hand.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
Hackman hits him with that little folder of his and says, make it a good one, Strap.
Yeah.
They give him the ball the first time, and he dribbles the ball off his leg.
Yep.
And then the second time, he shoots the ball, and he gets hit.
Yeah.
Right? And the ball bounces in and out. And so it's like he's got 2 foul shots to win the game.
The first time he gets hit, he goes to shoot, does his underhand shot.
And totally misses the basket.
I mean, misses the whole, practically misses the gym.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
It really is.
By the way, just off the topic, but I heard it might have been a Radio Lab or something.
Yeah.
So I think of Freakonomics that was all about the statistics of underhand shooting and why it's actually better.
Yeah. Dave Barry did that all through his career in the NBA, underhand shooting.
Yeah. And and apparently there's one game where Wilt Chamberlain did it and like made just but was so embarrassed by it that he never did it again.
Yeah, it's a pride thing. Shaq probably could have had a better free throw percentage if he'd learned how to shoot underhand.
Yeah.
All right, so there we have. You said this is your favorite moment in the movie with Ollie getting the redemption.
Yes, the free throw moment.
Yes.
So we're down to the end of the game, and they're up by 1 point.
The other team.
The other team's up by 1 point. They foul Ollie, which makes sense. You foul the weakest free throw shooter. Of course. Then they call timeout to ice him.
Yeah.
We're on the bench. I love the moment. Gene Hackman, this is great coaching.
All right, listen. After Ollie makes his second shot, and you will make your second shot, get back on defense right away. It may just be enough time for them to throw in a desperation toss, okay? All right. Let's go.
Put him in, Ollie.
All these actors playing these characters, these basketball players, have these really great moments that solidify your affection for them in the film. And he walks up to Ollie and he says, don't you pay that no mind. Don't you listen to them. You just focus on what you need to do. We're going to do these shots and we're going to get out of here. It's great, right? He stabilizes Ollie. If he doesn't walk up there, I don't think Ollie makes those shots.
And this is the moment that we talked about like in a baseball movie where it is one person. We've slowed time down. Mm-hmm. Everything is, and we feel it in this. And it is so... his nervousness and the crowd and the jeers and the hope and the guys giving him shit and like him making that first shot and then the second shot, it's like, oh my God, we're almost here. And even just the choice of what shot to use, because it's one that hits kind of high on the back rim and does a high bounce, which is really unpredictable, and right down through the net.
So then they win the game because the desperation shot
going
doesn't
to the
go in.
state championship,
Going
John.
To the state championship. Wow.
Yeah.
Who would have seen this coming? Old Hickory Huskers.
You know who wouldn't see it coming? Barbara Hershey.
Norman Dale, coach of the Ithaca Warriors, was suspended.
I can't really explain that. It's been a number of years, and it still kind of goes around in my head. I slow it down. Sometimes I really think that I can stop my fist from hitting that boy's jaw. 1 second, everything I'd worked for, it's just all finished.
Which is a great moment because we all have those moments of regret. Whether it's not necessarily physical, but we have those moments where I shouldn't have said that. God, I wish I hadn't said that. Or what if I just kept it in?
I'm haunted by things I said when I was 10.
Dude, yeah, it's a very good point. A lot of us are haunted by our stuff, and so and it's a way of kind of her kind of connecting with him, wanting to know him, right? And I think this is a very unusual courtship between them. It's fraught with a lot of danger and having to understand these impulses. Like, she's so mean to him at the beginning, but then as she discovers these things about him, he's not the prettiest character in terms of his past, his inner motivations and things.
Well, and I love I love a couple of things about the scene. One is that he just describes, I think it's in this scene, how strong his desire to win was.
Yes.
The power of just needing to win.
Yeah.
And he also, the thing I love is he says, when she talks about you hit this kid, and he says, he was the best kid I ever coached.
It's crazy. He's the best kid I ever coached.
And what he describes about him is interesting too. He's stubborn and tough.
Yeah.
And it's like he didn't say he was easy to coach or nice, or he said he was tough to coach.
Right.
And that made him the best kid, which is it's another interesting thing to think is the person who just says, yes, coach, that might not be the best kid.
And we as the audience are left to see the similarities between between Norman Dale and that kid, which is probably why he punched him.
Of course.
He felt an affinity for this.
Well, and we're looking at our kids that we're coaching right now.
Yeah.
Who was the toughest kid for him to coach is Raid.
Raid.
And that's the kid he actually bonds with in a way.
Yep.
It's real interesting.
And Buddy, who had been mouthing off to him in the first practice.
Right.
He ends up trusting the offense to Buddy as the point guard. Yeah, that's great. We have the press conference, and you have this really great lighthearted moment with Ollie going, "Oh, I knew I was going to make it all the way." And Gene Hackman goes, "Did you? Did you know? Did you know?" And then they ask him these legitimate questions, which I think is great.
The team you matched against in the final, South Bend Central, is one of the power teams in the state. Their front line is 6'4", 6'5", and 6'5". How can your little guys compete?
I don't know.
Do you have a scouting report?
Well, more important to me than a scouting report, my boys only know basketball, farming, and school, probably in that order. Most of them never seen a building taller than 2 stories except in a photograph, so taking them to Indianapolis, played in front of 15,000 people, is kind of like you and me going to the moon.
So he's just totally pushing the David versus Goliath storyline, which coaches do. Coaches do that all the time. And it's a great moment, and it's a great little back and forth. It gives you a small sample of what you still see nowadays between reporters and coaches. Completely overselling the opponent and underselling yourself as a team.
Right.
Coach Lou Holtz with the Notre Dame final, he was known for doing that. They would play a Division III team. It's a juggernaut team we're playing. It's a really tough team, And then Everett goes and visits a shooter.
It's a really nice scene.
Just a beautiful father and son moment.
I heard the game right there on that little Philco, and I heard Ollie dribble on his foot and then make that charity shot, and I started bawling, and they bring the white coats in here, and they put a jacket on me. I was feeling so good I didn't even mind.
Dennis Hopper does such beautiful, light work. He is, to me, when I watch him in the scene, he is standing on a feather the whole time. That's what I visualize as he's talking, because he's just being really honest with his son, probably for the first time in a long time.
Well, I feel real empty inside. And I have some bad visions.
And then he says to him,
"Oh, I wish I could be there."
I'll be thinking of you.
Son, keep their bud.
it's just great. And his son, Everett, has these great lines where he says, when you get out of here, we're going to get a house. There's inspirational. It's like, I'm going to give you that chance that you want. I believe in you, Dad, because guys, I know you can do it.
Well, because it seems like once Everett makes a decision, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
He's not for this idea when it starts.
Nope.
But once he decides, once he has that moment where, good job, Pop.
Yeah.
Then he's like, okay.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. And even the fact, like, that's why it goes like when there's the keep your head in the game after Shooter comes in drunk.
Yeah.
And while Everett does throw that punch, he still plays basketball in that game.
Yeah.
He doesn't accept what his dad did, but he goes like, no, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with you. Like, Dennis Hopper's performance is beautiful. I think this is my favorite performance of his.
Yeah.
This is the most vulnerable. This is the most human. I mean, it's like there's things he does in Blue Velvet and Apocalypse Now that are these wild things, and there's something for him. But this one, man, it's touching.
Well, he said he was a little upset that he was nominated for this and not nominated for Blue Velvet.
Right.
But I think they got the nomination right.
I think so too. Yeah. And something else they mentioned this on the commentary tracks, just also about addiction, is originally in the script.
Yeah.
He was supposed to end up at that last game.
Yes, he was. He was supposed to celebrate with the team at the end of the
and that he was good. And
film.
this is in classic sports movie structure. The goal is to resolve all of your conflicts within the last game. Yep. And so obviously you have to have Shooter come in with some great wisdom to fulfill what the needs of his character are in the last moment.
And his son.
And it's Dennis Hopper who says no.
Right.
Because, and this, I love this. This is so, because the structure of the way addiction is treated in movies is that the moment that the character has catharsis is you know everything's going to be okay. And if you know anything about 12-step programs, the admitting you have a problem, that's the first step.
Yeah.
It's not the last step. And movies tend to treat it as the last step. Oh, good, you admitted it. You had catharsis.
Right.
Now you're going to be sober. And what Dennis Hopper said is, no, this is going to be a long road. He doesn't come out of the hospital right away.
No.
It would be too easy. And I think that's absolutely the right choice.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It would undercut the value of addiction therapy, right?
Yeah.
It would undercut that he would just go. It would mean that his character wasn't taking it seriously again.
Yeah.
Right.
Because anyone who's dealt with addiction in their family or this shit ain't easy.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Absolutely. So they arrive at the gym and they're greeted by this guy who says, like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened in Indiana basketball, blah, blah, blah. And it's actually one of the players from the Milan game.
Wow.
Which is great.
That's awesome.
It's such a great little like homage to them, little touch of base. And it's the real gym where they actually played the game.
Oh, really?
That they won the game in.
The 54.
Yeah, where Milan actually won the championship. It was the actual gym they played in there. That's right. It's so fantastic. And you have this moment, once again, these great coaching moments, because they're all like overwhelmed by the size of the gym and they've never played in front of thousands of people. And he has this moment where he has Ollie get on, I think his straps back or one of the players' backs.
Right.
And he carries him over and they measure the gym. They measure the basket to the floor.
How far?
10 feet.
10 feet. I think you'll find it's exact same measurements as our gym back in Hickory. Okay, let's get dressed for practice.
And it's a way of deconstructing this idea of being overwhelmed by the situation. Everything's the same. The court is the same size. The basket is the same size. All that matters is what you do within those lines.
That is a beautiful coach moment.
I love it. And then he has this real quiet moment with the assistant coach where he's like,
it is big.
I love that. I love that. There's a locker room scene right there where they get this is like one of the really honest moments that Normandale has in this whole movie. Like I think when he was in the city, when he has that meeting at City Hall or wherever it is that where he's going to get fired, and he says, "I'm proud of these boys. Like I'm proud of what I've done."
Yeah.
This dovetails perfectly to this moment too, where he's like,
we're way past big speech time. I want to thank you for the last few months. It's been very special for me. Anybody have anything they want to say?
and everyone has their moment to say what they want to do this for.
Let's win this and for all the small schools who never had a chance to get here.
Okay.
I want to win for my dad. Let's win for Coach, who got us here.
Thank you.
Well, and this is the opposite of the previous locker room. The previous locker room was, I'm giving you the locker room speech.
Yeah.
It's a really great locker room speech.
Right.
The Normandale in this scene is vulnerable.
Yep.
And human and connecting. And he has, I believe, and we're going to see this later in the game, moved past the what I say is the law.
Right.
That you're not allowed to speak.
Right.
He's become a family member with these guys. And while he's certainly not treating them as equals, he's the coach and they're the players.
Right.
There's much more of a give and take. And he's so vulnerable when he thanks them.
Yeah.
And tells them he loves them. And also, you know, this is 1950s men.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot. It's a beautiful, beautiful scene.
Agreed.
I love you guys.
So then the game starts, and, you know, they're getting kind of run out of the gym, and they have all these excuses coming out the first time out, and Hackman lets them all speak, and then he says,
Maybe they were right about us. Maybe we don't belong up here.
Coach, can I say something?
Yeah.
I think Jimmy can take a guy that's guarding him if we set him up.
What about it, Jimmy? All right, let's go. Come on.
And this is such a huge thing in all of sports, and everyone who's played any kind of sports knows this, is that there is going to be a time when you are shook.
Yeah.
There is going to be a time where it's not working. And what you have to fall back on is fundamentals.
Yeah.
Is that, and it's all those times of practice.
Yeah.
That's what you have to fall back on. And that's what they do. They fall back on, what did we practice?
Right.
This court is the same size court as our court. Go back to fundamentals, and they find it.
Yeah.
You know?
People have, this is where we should mention, like, people have had people say the film's a little uncomfortable at the end because it's an all-black team versus an all-white, or mostly black team versus an all-white team. I'm not sure of the racial makeup of the Milan.
So I actually know something about this.
Okay.
So what they did was, that is the same makeup as the team that the Milan team played in the 1954 game.
Well, there we go.
It was from South Bend, Indiana, and that they were, you know, 4 African-American kids. I don't remember what it was.
It was integrated.
But they had exactly the same makeup in this game. That's why you're seeing what you're seeing.
Well, some people have said that they take this film because they don't know the background of the film. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, it's all white kids versus all black. That's irrelevant in the situation because it's trying to evoke what happened with the Milan game, right?
One of the interesting things, so this is something you got to think about.
Yeah.
Extras are hard to get.
Yes.
If you're a student filmmaker, I talk to my students, they're like, I'm going to get 12 extras. No, they're not. It's really hard to get extras. You don't have a lot of money to pay them. No. When you're deciding you're going to shoot a giant basketball game in a 6,000 seat arena, you need 6,000 extras. Yeah. Well, how are they going to get them? What they ended up doing with this one is that they had a bunch of local basketball teams come and play and brought everyone in for free who rooted for those teams and then begged them to stay. But they only had them for a few hours.
Right.
And they were dwindling because there's nothing, not paying these people, and they're just more and more leaving. And so first they have 2,000 people, and then they have 1,800, and then they have 1,000, and then they have 500. And what they have to do is make sure to get all the money shots with crowds in the background. And you move the crowd around the stadium because you can't fill the whole stadium the whole time.
Right.
And then they figured out, okay, the shot of him winning the game.
Yeah.
We have to have the crowd there for that. Other stuff, maybe not. And so you really have to choreograph what you're doing with all your extras and what you're shooting in front of them before they leave. Plus, they can't just sit there. You can't have tired extras. They're watching the most exciting game ever in history. So you're constantly going, no, get up and cheer, get up and cheer.
Right.
It's hard to do.
Sure.
And one other small technical thing, but it's something that I noticed.
Yeah.
Scoreboards are hard because they have clocks on them, and the clocks always have to make sense. So anytime you have a shot in the background, before you do the shot, you have to go reset the clock to 2 minutes and 27 seconds, and then you have to do it again, and you have to have it be exactly right, which seems like a small thing, but every time you're doing it is a big pain in the ass that you have to keep track of.
And it's important.
And it's really important. And I mean, it's really, in this game, it's like you have to see that shot go in at exactly the right second, and you got to get it just right.
Because the audience will absolutely call you out on it.
Oh, yeah.
They'll absolutely call you out on it if you're not really focusing on what you're doing. Right? We don't see a halftime in this game.
No.
Right? It just kind of glosses through. Everything's real close, and they're down by... And you have these great basketball, these backdoor cuts, these great basketball sequences.
Which was real playing, by the way.
Yeah.
That's how they did it, was they just said... They had 20 minutes. They had refs on the court. They said, just play.
Just play.
And the refs called fouls, but they never took free throws or anything.
Gotcha.
So they just... And so a lot of that is just them playing.
Yeah.
In addition to the choreograph thing.
Yeah.
Because this is what we talked about before. Boxing is something you can choreograph down to everything, every little moment.
Right.
basketball, it's harder.
It's really hard.
It's hard to get because there's a lot of movement.
There's so many variables.
And a lot of the joy comes from it's happening. And so that's what they did. They had him just play.
It's really like a love letter. That whole game is a love letter, the way it's filmed, to the game of basketball.
In particular, this era of basketball.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I love all of it. So it gets real close, so it gets tight, and then it comes down to one final shot.
As it does.
They call the timeout, and Normandale says,
All right, listen up, listen up. Here's what we're going to do. Jimmy, they're going to be expecting you to take the last shot. We're going to use you as a decoy. Buddy, you get the ball, give it to Merle on the picket fence. He's going to take the last shot. All right, let's go.
And the team doesn't want to do it. No.
What's the matter with you guys?
And it's great because the music just stops. The needle scratches on the record.
What's the matter with you?
And Jimmy says, I'll make it.
I'll make it.
All right. Buddy, get the ball to Jimmy, top of the key. Rustin, spread the floor. Let's go. Team.
This is the evolution of this character. Yeah. This is not the same guy who said, what I say about this game is the law.
Right.
This is a guy who's now become a team member, still the coach, but he's willing to bend. He's willing to be flexible. Yeah. And he goes, okay.
Yeah, and also the team itself now feels they've earned the right to have this moment to say, we're not in defiance of you. Jimmy's taken us this far. Jimmy deserves to take the last shot.
And we've learned your system. We understand what you're doing. We are your team.
Yep.
And if he had said, no, we're doing the fake, they would have gone, okay.
Yeah, and they might not have won.
Well, we can never know.
We can never know, right? Exactly. So also, now what's so interesting about this is the actor who played Jimmy Chitwood, he shot the shots.
Oh, yeah.
Like David Anspaugh didn't know that he was going to make the shots. He just shot him. And David filmed it, happened to catch it, and he shot it twice. And he made it both times.
Right. One thing to think about, by the way, is that the pressure on a player in a state championship game to make the last shot at the last moment is huge.
Yes.
Well, the pressure on an actor playing that character with all the extras who are about to leave is also huge. And apparently he was practicing the shot before, missed it every time.
Wow.
Yeah. And people were starting to get nervous. In fact, the director was thinking, maybe I got to move the shot up a little bit.
Right.
But if I do, that's going to break his confidence. And so they went with it. And as you say, made them both.
And what's other interesting thing about this is that final shot that Jimmy takes, go watch the old footage. It is the exact same spot where he made that final shot to win the game in real life. That the player from Milan, it's choreographed exactly the same in the movie. Gets that separation from the defender and shoots it from the corner of the key and makes it. They all rush the courts. You see the other players despondent, sitting on the ground, and everything happens, right? All the storylines are wrapped up in this final game. Cletus is still alive, kissing his wife. The Reverend's happy. Dennis Hopper is jumping up and down in the hospital. You know, everything is great. Everything is resolved. And then we kind of drift off. It's almost like we're reliving the movie again in real quick time.
In hearing it in audio snippets.
I've seen you guys can shoot, but there's more to the game than shooting. There's fundamentals and defense.
And then we end up in the gym, and we see this kid in the gym.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that originally it was going to be a shot of an empty gym.
Yeah.
And the camera was just going to move in. We'd hear the snippets of the audio and move in on the picture.
Yeah.
And the director suddenly went, no, something's missing here. Because the point of this is that the legend continues.
Yes.
Is that as you do, that 1954 game.
Yeah.
People are still remembering that moment. And so he wanted a connection with the future. And he went to the school that they're at and said, where is the best 7 or 8 year old basketball player in the school? Ended up being the kid of like the janitor or something. Oh, wow. And he came in and, man, that kid makes some shots. Yeah, he makes like 3 or 4, which like for a 7-year-old is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that was a last minute addition.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I love the way it ends. It goes up into that shot of them in black and white, that black and white picture. And it says, and there's that pause and he says,
I love you guys.
And that's the way the film ends.
Yeah.
Such a powerful film. Such an amazing film. All right. Well, thanks. Let's talk about final thoughts. Steve, do you have final thoughts?
I do. First of all, it's great revisiting the film. I don't know why I haven't watched it very much. It's going to go back into the rotation. It's a great film.
I mean...
And the thing I was thinking about was that most of the sports movies we see are about professional athletes.
Yeah.
And there are very few humans in the world that ever become professional athletes.
Yes.
It is something we aspire to maybe, but we never experience. And while there are more people that become college athletes. It's still not a very big number. But almost all of us have played on a little league team or a high school team. We all experience the coach. We all experience the team. And I was thinking about, why is this movie important and meaningful in a way that the other ones aren't? And it's because this is us, much more so than watching The Natural or watching, you know, these really big movies about big sports moments. And I was thinking, why is this so important? And why is high school sports and children's athletics so important? And it's important because the lessons of discipline and fundamentals and teamwork are so important to building our characters and who we are. And the coach is the central figure in that the coach is the person that pushes you beyond what you thought you were capable of doing. The coach is the person who teaches you how to work together as a team. And for me, that was volleyball. Volleyball was always my favorite sport. And I remember when I got taught, you know, a 6-2 and 5-1 formation, and I was a setter and knew each position. And there was this sensation of like knowing where you were supposed to be. And if you worked the machine correctly, it was beautiful. And you don't get, and that experience is so important, even though I'm not a good volleyball player. I mean, no one would ever put me on there. You know, I love volleyball, but I wasn't that great. But the lessons I learned from doing it were so fundamental to what it is in life. You know, and that's what I kept getting over and over again, is working together, teamwork, discipline, fundamentals, and practice. And even if you never are going to be anywhere near a professional athlete, learning those things is valuable. And that's what I love watching this movie.
That's great, man. Listen, I've seen this movie 500 million times. Like, it is one of these films that if I stumble upon it, I will lose an hour of my day watching it wherever it's at. I have to drag myself away from it or turn off the television. I've stayed up late sometimes because it's come on. I'm like, damn it. Because there's a magic to this film that you don't find in a lot of sports movies. And there are some great sports movies. But there is something about this being a slice of Americana that is done so effectively. And it is exactly what you said. You talk about professional athletes. These are high school kids. There's something about the innocence of high school sports, where you're beginning to form yourself as a man, beginning to form yourself in relation to other people, working with a team, figuring it out. You know what I'm saying? Building friendships, building bonds that might last you for the rest of your life. I'm still best friends with my high school best friend. So we're still best friends. And so it's like those things, you see that develop. And you're right, the idea of the coach, wanting that coach, that one who understands better than you what you need, who knows what you need, who will get you there, who understands, and that you, when it clicks for you, it really clicks for you when you open a world up. You know, a whole world opens up to you, and you see that happening in this film. You see them come on his team piece by piece. They all buy into the Normandale system, and it yields results once they buy in. And I think that's what's great about this film. And also the other storylines. The love story is not a conventional love story in any way, shape, or form. It begrudgingly happens, and when it happens, it's authentic. He has that great moment where he says to her, you know, we didn't cover it in the breakdown of the film, but
you're right, we missed it.
But he has that moment where he says to her, "I've been imagining doing that since I met you." You know, and there's of power.
And I was tired of
imagining it. Exactly. The storyline with Shooter, you know, this whole idea of redeeming him as an alcoholic, you know, these kinds of things. So there's so much more to this film than just about this team. There's so much more to this film. And the film, to its credit, I mean, it's ranked number 13 in AFI in the 100 years of sports films. It's ranked number 13. It was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 2001 as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And in 2008, AFI revealed its top 10 best films in classic American film genres, and Hoosiers was acknowledged as the 4th best film in sports. Sports genre, and there's a museum to actually commemorate the real life achievements of the Milan team that was established, and it's so amazing, just so amazing, all the stuff that it was. And Dennis Hopper was nominated for the Oscar, and Jerry Goldsmith was nominated for the Oscar for the score. So there's so much about this film that's fantastic. So
absolutely, no question about it.
There we go. And so that is Hoosiers.
Yes,
here on the Cine-Files. That's what we think. What do you think? Thank you for putting up with my first attempt at leading this thing. Wow, it was a lot. I feel bad for Steve who has to edit this whole thing down because there was a lot of times we stopped and started. Thanks, everybody. And I hope we have reignited your love for the movie. But tell us what you think. Like, tweet at us. You guys can reach us on Facebook at the Cine-Files, Cine-Files. You can also find us on iTunes at Cine-Files and on Stitcher at Cine-Files now.
Yeah, we have a dash now.
We have a dash now. We're moving up in the world. We have a YouTube channel that you can go and if you don't want to listen to us on a podcast, you can go listen to it on the YouTube channel. And you can always find me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram. Steve, where can they find you?
They can find me at SR Morrison. We love interacting with you. We love talking to you on Twitter.
All right. That's it from us. We will see you next time on the Cine-Files.